my calculations are correct, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious
It has begun!
Calm down, Doctor. Now is not the time for fear.
All you do is behave.
Give them nothing, but take from them everything!
Program complete. Enter when ready.
Greetings once again, my friends, and welcome back to Geek News, Reviews, and Opinions, the podcast where we go over the month's events in Geek. I am your host, Adam Mickelson, aka Drac. I hope everybody's having an awesome day or night when you're listening to this. And for the first time in a long time, I am happy to introduce all of my panelists. First, let's start off with the recovering Shadow Blazer. Shadow Blazer, how are you in the Shadow Dimension that is continuing to strengthen those dark muscles of yours?
So far, so good, I guess.
Have you gotten any shadow-based augmentations for it? Do you have tentacles coming out of your leg?
No, I do not have that.
Out of your face?
No,
Actually, I can
do not
confirm
have
this. He
that
doesn't have
either.
tentacles coming out of his face.
No tentacles.
And then also joining us for the first time since his surgery, and appropriately the month that we're going to be covering tonight, Brenton Volley. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm looking forward to talking about things that I'm completely unaware of while I was essentially dead.
Yeah,
So...
I was going to say, while you were essentially either dead or high, one of the two.
I wish I was higher than I actually was.
I was actually going to ask you,
just...
did they put you on anything like major for the recovery?
Nothing super extreme, which in hindsight I am grateful for because there is an opioid epidemic. And just a general opioid problem. So
I've never felt it because I'm the wuss. So, as people will point out when they listen to the April podcast and find out how much actual hydrocodone knocks me out, yes, I will be the wuss, and happily so. By the way,
Adam, there are some people more predispositioned to addiction than others, but we're not here to get into that at all.
Nope, not at all. But I do find it funny, the material that we're going to be talking about tonight, because in essence, we are covering the month where, for this podcast at least, the proverbial shit hit the fan. Because if I remember the timeline correctly, Alex, you got injured late April, I want to say, right?
Early April.
Early April. Okay, so it was more like in April, and then you actually had to go off and get your surgery done, Brenton, and then I also, for the first 4 months of this damn year, just kept rotating illnesses into my house. So this was like, okay, well, now I don't have two other panelists, so I guess I'm doing an AI and anime podcast that eventually Alex had to dip out of as well. So, yeah, we're going to be covering the month of May, and thankfully not too much happened in the month of May. We had big controversies, but not a whole lot of other controversies. But before we get into all of that stuff, let's go ahead and start with Brenton, because he's back to the podcast. What have you been playing? What have you been watching to be able to help yourself feel better after getting your tonsils out?
Yeah, so I first completed my summer class, which isn't answering the question, so I'll answer the question. I
was actually going to say, I think you did recovery backwards. That's me.
Yeah, for anybody who's curious, you can totally ask me this at another time, and I'm more than happy to talk about everything that went down between April to about mid-June. I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV Dawn Trail, as that expansion just recently dropped, and
Yes.
I had early access. So I was getting myself...
And a bit of controversy with it, I guess, because it was like, I guess it was the first time that FF14 had ever been hit by a DDoS attack.
Oh, no, that's definitely not the first time.
Oh, it's not? Okay, because everything I was reading was saying it was the first time.
No. I've been playing since late 2016. There have been at least a dozen DDoSes
All right.
since I've been playing. Yeah, that game gets DDoSed a lot. But it's been primarily Dawn Trail or just the end of Endwalker, getting through the rest of the story that I had essentially stopped playing because I took an extended break and had to play catch up, so
Right.
I could participate day one with the early access. So I've been
Nice.
playing that, and um, that's about it. That's how I've been spending my free time.
All right. Alex the Shadow Blazer, have you been able to play or watch anything new?
As a matter of fact, I have been playing. Went back to Valkyria Chronicles. It's a game I have
Valkyrie or Valkyria? Because
Valkyria.
I
Yeah,
hate to clarify this, but there are two games.
yeah. So it's definitely a game I've had a real love-hate relationship with. Uh, it's sort of like I love almost everything else
Is
about
that
it.
the one that's like a strategy RPG that's like based in World War One?
Yeah, but more
Okay,
World
all
War,
right. So
just kind of
I'm thinking of the
more,
right one.
yeah, more alternate history of World War II.
Oh, okay, all right. My bad. But it's like
Right.
World War aesthetics. Yeah, I've heard
Yeah,
it's a grind. It's long.
it is a
But to a
grind,
lot of
and
people,
it
it's
is.
rewarding.
Oh, I wish I could say the same, that it's rewarding. I find it more frustrating than anything else, to the point that I cheated through a couple of missions.
Hmm.
I've done a couple missions successfully, but
Hmm.
it's really, I think, annoyingly frustrating and many a times. But
But
again,
you're
I love,
still sticking with it.
yeah,
Okay.
because I like story, I like the characters, I like the setting, I like the aesthetics of the game. It's just everything else I can't stand.
Oh, hey, you can actually make the same claim that I've made on numerous streams and Let's Plays that nobody believes me on, is that I've actually played really shitty games because the story was compelling enough. Now you can make that claim too.
Yes. I've
Well,
also
and correct me
I
if I'm
also have
wrong, this
the
is
anime
because it's
remember.
supposed to be like a strategy RPG. It's your first one, isn't it?
No, because I played Sakura Wars 5 many
Okay,
years
all right.
ago. That's also the old school Sakura Wars is very much a strategy RPG style game.
Okay. All right. I wasn't sure about that because like all the big strategy RPGs I know of are like Fire Emblem, um, Final Fantasy Tactics, obviously, and Shining Force, like all those big titles. But Sakura Wars, I am vaguely familiar with, and
Mhm.
I always mistake it for oh shit, what is the game called? Actually, it might be the other one that you play a lot of. Not Neptunia, but the one where it's like schoolgirls in samurai outfits, but when they get hit, they lose clothing or whatever. I'm aware of that franchise as well. Senran Kagura.
Yeah,
That's what it's.
Senran, yeah, that's what I was starting to think. Senran Kagura maybe,
Yeah,
but
and I keep
I've never
mixing the two
I've never
up.
actually played that one. I need to try out Senran sometime. That does look kind of fun.
Well, it's been recommended who knows how many frickin' times, so maybe we'll get around to it.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna see what I can do first. Beat the Valkyria Chronicles game, or watch the whole anime first. I got the anime on
There's an
order.
associated anime along with the game.
Yes, the anime was made in 2009, which unfortunately it was also
Before or
released
after
by.
the game.
I want to say after the first game. I
Okay.
think. Oh God, maybe around the same time, because I'm pretty sure the game's PS3 anyway. Originally PS3. I'm playing it on Steam, so
Jeez. Yeah.
so yeah. So the anime came about 2009. It never got an official license over here, so that means I've had to go through other channels to get myself a copy. So,
It does it involve a profession involving sailing the seven seas?
more or less, yeah.
Okay, all right. So at that point, Editor Drac, you know what to do.
Yeah.
So okay, so Valkyrie Chronicles. You've been watching Valkyrie Chronicles as well. Anything else of note?
really kind of it. That's just the
Okay.
game that's been occupying my time recently.
So people are going to be very bored with my answer because I'm basically playing the same games that I was reviewing anyway, and not really a whole lot of updates there because I know that people really want me to talk about that. But I've ultimately just decided, you know what? You get to be excited when the review video comes out. That's that, and if you actually pay attention to the GNRO minicasts, I actually do put up footage of games that I am reviewing as well as games that I am casually playing. So you get to see what's been worked on. But ultimately, a lot of my time this in the gap of recording podcasts has been recording a butt ton of World of Warcraft Dragonflight because I still was missing about a zone and a half of questing footage. And so at that point, I needed to make a mad dash to finish it because we have a new expansion coming in about about 5 to 6 weeks, Alex.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point,
We sure do.
I needed to get the main story content done, so that I'm only working on the additional content, which is nowhere near the length of all of that, because who knows, maybe I'll actually also start doing questing footage for The War Within. And so I've basically been mad dashing a lot of recording this week, or not week, but months, just to be able to get caught up on things that need to be done. So unfortunately, I'm kind of bland this week. The only things I've watched have been Beyblade and Gundam, Mobile Suit Gundam 8th MS Team. I'm not as far as people would like to hear that I am. Trust me, those videos are coming. I just want to make sure that I'm like a majority through before I start doing reviews. So be patient. So with that, that's what we've been playing and watching, and now we have to get on to some other obligatory nonsense, because it's once again that time for Sweet Baby Nonsense on the podcast. So, and there you go. We have a snazzy intro segment for it. Since Brenton is brand spanking new to this, because he hasn't been here the last 2 podcasts that we've done, I've decided to christen my own war, because there was Romney's war, and then there was also Aldo's war. And I believe you had a war yourself, but I can't remember if you did or not.
Me?
Or maybe Alex had it. I swear, everybody on this podcast has had a war but me. And now I'm having my war, which is basically involving the company Sweet Baby Inc. and all of the weird BS that's been happening over the last few months that is affectionately being called Gamergate 2.0, but the rest of the internet is going, ha 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 ha, that's stupid. So at that point, where did we leave off last time? Oh yes, Stellar Blade kicked a bunch of ass. And looked good, and had a nice ass while doing it. So
And literally nobody cared.
Well, people cared about Stellar Blade.
Yeah, there's
So much that they bought.
They cared about
People
they cared about the game. They cared about the game, the people who wanted to buy it, the people who
Yes.
liked it, but
That's the
nobody
way to put it.
cared about this whole sexiness. It was never a controversy. It was never an issue. Stop
Well-
trying to make fetch a thing.
People did. Just the wrong people.
correct.
So at that point, in case you didn't know this, Brenton, but Stellar Blade was the highest pre-ordered game in all of the month of April, and that's not just on Steam. It was on PlayStation as well. And somebody actually
If I recall correctly from being passed out or high, I believe this was something you told me in text.
I might have, yes, because I found the irony very, very funny. That everybody was or at least all the people who were detractors of it really wanted it to fail, and all they did was create the opposite effect and had people flock to the game. So at that point, that's where April kind of ended up. The month of May went a completely different direction. A direction that I think we can all agree is a direction you do not go when it comes to online debate. At least I'm speaking out of my ass, but let me just double check this. Alex, where is one bit of territory that you would say that people should not go if they are having, whether it be political discourse or personal discourse, online?
Oh, that's tough because that's kind of vague, but I don't know.
Would you, let me put it this way, would you involve said person's friends and family?
No, I wouldn't.
And unfortunately, that's what happened. Or at least, that's what was attempted to happen. So this month's Sweet Baby Nonsense, the biggest two things that happened out of it were the launching of two websites. One is a sub website, but I'm still going to count it. DEIdetected.com, which, if people remember Cabrutus Rambo, he created the Sweet Baby Inc. Detected Steam group. He launched a website at the end of April that earned the ire of gaming journalists for quite a bit. To this day, it still gets DDoSed, and they still try to take it down. But basically, DEI Detected is where the Sweet Baby Inc. Detected group, Steam group, was only targeted towards that company. DEIdetected.com is more of a submission concept where you can not only take on Sweet Baby, although they do take on a lot of Sweet Baby, you can bring up other companies as well. And thankfully, I am happy to say that unlike the website that we had to cover last month, that was basically Bully Hunters 2.0, Cabrutus Rambo has actually taken this responsibility, or the responsibility of a website like this, fairly seriously, as he has had to battle on not just detractors, but people on his own side who have gotten mad at him because when a game gets submitted for a particular company or whatnot, they actually go through the process of digging and determining whether or not this game has DEI through the usual means of like Sweet Baby Inc. or other means. And if it doesn't, then they do get rejected. And so that's where he gets the ire of people on his own side of the argument, is because they're like, well, you should just put everything up. And he's saying, no, we're going to do this ethically. So whether you like that, whether you dislike it, that's completely up to you. But a lot of the controversy around the Sweet Baby Inc. nonsense this month had to do with not only DEIdetected.com, but also the second website, KotakuDetected.com. This is a sub-website put up on Smash JT's main website that catalogs gaming journalists, basically who have previously worked for Kotaku or have an affiliation or a relationship with Kotaku, puts that up, shows where that affiliation or how long they worked at Kotaku, and shows an example of their work. This has also drawn the ire of gaming journalists, specifically Alyssa McConte and Nick Calandra. Nick Calandra is a former reporter over at Second Wind, who is a gaming journalist up until one of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight. So the first thing that we have to talk about revolves around Smash JT. Because he put up Kotaku Detected, and before that he tried to start up it actually did launch a little bit, the hashtag #EndKotaku, Alyssa Mercante decided to basically involve innocent parties in this, as she had dug up the Facebook of Smash JT's wife and had messaged her and basically said, how do you feel about being married to a harassing bigot? We don't necessarily know how those responses went because Smash JT insisted that his wife remain out of this. It unfortunately got worse because Alyssa also was able to track down through that Smash JT's mother-in-law, apparently, who also got a message, as well as one of Smash JT's kids. That's the only one I haven't been able to 100% confirm. But yeah, basically pestering them on Facebook about how much of a harassing bigot their father/husband or son-in-law actually is. So, that's the first step here. The second step involves Nick Calandra. Well, actually, really quick, do you guys have any input on that one in particular? Or
I don't.
Should I just keep going? Okay.
Keep going.
Yeah.
So, the next one involves Nick Calandra. Nick Calandra, like I said, is a former games journalist over at Second Wind. Second Wind is a collaboration of a bunch of games journalists who have a Patreon and try to organize themselves the way a gaming website would. Except in Nick Calandra's case, he decided to wage his own personal war behind a paywall. Specifically, the Second Wind Patreon Discord. You have to pay to get, or you have to pay the Patreon in order to get into this Discord, and he decided to wage a personal war against Mark Kern. Just in case Brenton doesn't know who I'm talking about, Mark Kern is a former executive over at Blizzard. He was involved in World of Warcraft up until the Burning Crusade, StarCraft 2, and a little bit of Diablo.
Wow, that's an impressive resume.
But then left in order to go work on a independent contract, or an independent idea that he's had for a while that is escaping me off the top of my... I want to say it's like Foxfire or something like that, but it's not. Oh shit, I'm never going to remember it. But Grums is how he go. It's basically how he's been going as a blue for Blizzard and also online. Grums has actually been a very active voice against the Sweet Baby Inc. nonsense. As a former executive in the gaming industry, he is also the person that has drawn a lot of the ire of these gaming journalists for starting the Free Stellar Blade campaign that I mentioned in the previous month's podcast. This is where they were going to do much like how he helped for Nostalrius, he did a petition that he wanted to get 10,000 signatures for, and he had already contacted a printing company in Korea to deliver that to Shift Up headquarters. Shift Up is the company that made Stellar Blade. And this was to counter the Sony censorship that ultimately did get taken care of before he had even submitted that. So good on Shift Up. But because he had already had all of these outspoken moments, gaming journalists didn't really like him. Nick Calandra was so butthurt, in fact, that when somebody offered a bounty on Grums's head on Twitter, literally 20,000 was the starting bid, and then eventually went up to 30,000, he decided in his private little Discord to issue out a request for people to dig up information on Grums. Now, what Nick Calandra didn't know at the time was that a guy by the name of Gigabear was in that Patreon Discord. And he was basically a mole. And so, he had already busted Nick Calandra previously. It was during all of this, but this was kind of the moment where he had to leave. He busted him by basically giving him a red herring and then luring Nick Calandra into a sting, because the way that he was luring him in, the name in particular was an anagram for urinalist. So, Brenton, if you've been wondering why I've been texting gaming urinalists most of the last few months, this is where it actually comes from.
Gotcha.
So Nick Calandra got busted for trying to look all this stuff up. So he basically started up a doxing campaign in this Discord against Grums. And got the information that he basically wanted, which was public information. It was public information about Mark Kern's business, which, in case people don't realize this, a lot of indie game developers don't have office space. They actually do their job in their company in their homes. So it's not like Nick Calandra technically did anything illegal, but he technically did dox Grums. And unfortunately, did not really get punished for doing so. Now, I know for a fact that Grums has spoken to attorneys on the matter to see if he can pursue any legal action against Nick Calandra, but the most that Nick has gotten, and obviously has not learned any lessons from, is that Second Wind decided to, quote, part ways with him. And then as soon as they got rid of him, they scrubbed that Discord clean of all of the evidence that might have been there. It's just too bad that Gigabear had already gotten it all. So, yeah, Grums has been doxxed. Any thoughts on that? I'm particularly pissed on this one because that Patreon is sitting at about $54,000 a month. Well, now it's about $52,000. But this guy conducted a doxing campaign behind a $52,000 a month paywall. And that is still up on Patreon. when I'm pretty sure that's very clearly against TOS. I know it's against the TOS of Discord. I know it's against the TOS of Patreon. And I also know it's against the TOS of Twitter. And I thought with Alex Jones that when one place bans them, everybody bans them. Oh, wait, only one side of the political argument. Got it. Yeah, Nick Calandra shouldn't be on any of these for breaking the law. Or at least breaking TOS. But that's the way that it goes. So, then Kotaku detected they almost got shut down for a weekend. They basically send in, so people like Chris Kindred and other Sweet Baby Inc. employees sent a bunch of vile letters saying that Smash JT was basically coming for them and their families, which obviously was not true, and sent that into Wix, the hosting company that hosted Smash JT's website. And all it took was for Smash JT to get a hold of a Wix employee and show receipts that he had. And that got immediately renewed on the following Monday. So, good on you. But unfortunately, the last story is a little bit more annoying. Because, do you know who Chris Kindred is, Brinton?
I don't.
Chris Kindred is the guy who shit on Akira Toriyama's grave and then got promptly dogpiled on Twitter.
All right. That's awful.
Yeah. Well, he decided to shit on Toriyama's grave for the obvious racist implications of Mr. Popo, which any Dragon Ball fan would know that is not true. So, obviously, that worked out so well for Chris Kindred, and he was just so happy that Smash JT was able to keep his Kotaku Detected website that he contacted a former employer of Smash JT's, one with which, by the way, Smash JT still had a good relationship with. Oops. And so, the former employer reached out to Smash JT and said, oh yeah, by the way, this guy Chris called and said that you were a racist and a bigot and a harasser online and we should totally fire you. Keep in mind, Smash JT had not worked at this company for months. And after Smash JT explained this, the employer handed over the voicemail. And guys, it's not even a good attempt at trying to be subtle or trying to be criminal in any way. In fact, it's the stupid criminal kind of way. The dude didn't even completely mask his name, as he only did his last name. He said his name was like Chris Ferguson or something like that, and he wanted to contact him about Smash JT or Smash JT's real name and tell them how horrible he was and that he should be fired. Because that's how you win arguments online, is that you get people fired or you attack their loved ones. And it gets even better because I actually forgot to include this one, but this was also one that happened in May that I want to bring to you guys' attention. And that is of Paul Scott Canavan. Paul Scott Canavan is a former, he should be a former, but he's probably going to keep his job. He is an artist on Magic the Gathering and Warhammer. And he literally said this on Twitter, and no, I'm not going to quote it. I'm going to let his words speak for himself, as long as this actually lets me share the screen, because we had issues with that last time. So here is the word in question. This is absolutely the play. We should be doing this with all these weird creeps. Track down their significant others and mothers and string them up.
What?
This is a response to a post from Alyssa Mercante detailing over the situation where she tracked down Smash JT's wife, which you can now see the evidence right there. See, that's the best part about this whole thing, is that a lot of people can sit there and go, well, I'm just pulling things out of my ass. No, I have receipts. And they're sad. In fact, they're infuriating in some ways, but they're sad also. And what's even better about that, Brenton, is he immediately, as soon as he started getting criticized for it, he tried to backpedal it. Not with this one. He was double downing on this one. But then, once people like That Umbrella Guy and Mark Kern got involved, then got a tweet like this: "Sending a hate mob after me seems a little unkind considering I was just agreeing that people who attack others on the internet should be held accountable." Is that what he said? Or did he say string them up? Yeah, I'm pretty sure he said string them up. I admit I phrased it poorly, but also it wasn't a statement. It was a reply to a tweet, because those aren't statements, everybody. And again, I was just replying to a tweet. I understand how it was misread. I was taking accountability right there. Where did you take the accountability, Paul? Where did you take it? I'd like to know. And it only got worse, because this basically earned the ire of Grums. And he immediately started to reply all of that. And Canavan had to go in, obviously, as you might surmise, had to go into hiding. And to my knowledge, he still hasn't come back yet. So that's all of the Sweet Baby nonsense. Thoughts?
Okay, let me start.
Go ahead.
Now, all right. I don't condone doxing or harassing in any way, obviously. But that said, unfortunately, there's also a bit of turnabouts, a bit of fair play.
Okay.
You start a website, or you start a blog, or you start a Twitter thread, basically saying, hey, basically naming names, making lists, whatever, saying these are the people who work for this organization, part of this media outlet. You mentioned the whole, like, the people of Kotaku, right? And then
Well, a lot of the people on that list formerly worked at Kotaku. Now they work other places.
Yes.
So, for example, Jason Schreier is on it.
Right. And so you have people like Smash JT who basically run a outrage bait site to say, and start making lists and start naming names, and then they get surprised that sometimes the people that they're biting bite back. Once again, I don't condone any kind of doxing or harassing, especially people unrelated to the events or to your whatever beef you have.
The argument that you're basically making is you play with fire, you get burned.
Yes. And and again, third time here, I'm stressing, I don't endorse anything here. I don't endorse this behavior. I do think they're all both in their own here to basically go after people who, again, have no connection to this and have no and you have no beef with.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But again, I can kind of also see why, again, sometimes they do bite back a little harder than they should. And they, like I said, going after the wrong people. So there you go. I don't know. I guess you can say I have a wishy-washy non-answer here, but that's kind of the way I see it. It's people who make these kinds of outrage bait websites and complain about, geez, anything a little bit that's a little bit different that they don't like, and again start naming names, and basically what I'm trying to say is they start making they don't do it themselves, fine. They don't get their own hands dirty, but they don't have to, because they know their little cronies who eat this up will probably go out and do that, and they probably do. They probably go out and start hassling these people's social media accounts and start letter bombing them and start doing all sorts of bullshit.
We already know that to some extent, Smash JT's wife got hit pretty hard with some of this stuff, and it's primarily because I believe Smash already answered this on the Side Scrollers podcast when Stuttering Craig brought him on to talk about the situation. So we know it affected her, but the rest we don't know. But I agree. I agree with the sentiment, and frankly, I'm going to give you a massive kudos here, Alex, because I think you're doing the one thing that isn't really being exercised in all of this. You exercised legitimate empathy in the argument, which I think in a lot of cases in these situations is lost. Because I don't remember who said it, but I think it's actually very, very appropriate and this is a quote way back in high school, but it was somebody in my class who basically said the internet is going to change warfare on a whole different level. And I've always appreciated the guy's sentiment on that. Jeez, I can't remember exactly who said it, because he was like in a group of friends that all kind of had the same sentiment. But I don't think even he completely would grasp how right he was at the time. And keep in mind, guys, I'm an old fart. High school was a while ago. And this guy pretty much hit the nail on the head. But I'm going to give you some major props on that, Alex, because I think you have done what I don't think a whole lot in this particular argument have done, which is exercise actual empathy. And seeing the other person at the other end of the tweet as a human being, instead of just a bit of pixels on the screen, which is difficult to do in situations like this. Do I 100% agree with you on what you're saying? Not really, but that's because of, in my opinion, some legitimate lines being crossed here. Because, like, I've had this discussion with you numerous times. Like, if you're going to have an honest discourse, you keep it between the two parties involved. You never expand it. Because then at that point, all you do is create victims in your wake. And that's ultimately what did happen here. And your argument is sound. Like, DEI detected did potentially do that. Do we have evidence of that? Not really. But is it possible? Sure. It absolutely is. I just disagree on the concept that because major lines were crossed on this. So, like, I also have exercised that empathy. I do get that people like Chris Kindred are actually people. But when you commit deplorable acts like this, I have a problem with it. Primarily because you took it too far, and you took it into the context of livelihood. You took it into the context of family. And that's, to me, that's just somewhere you don't go. But I totally understand where you're coming from on that.
Right.
So,
okay.
Did you have anything to add on that?
No, I think I summed it up as well as I could. Anyway.
Brenton, your thoughts on it?
Help me understand the catalyst that resulted in everything that you just shared, because that's the piece I feel I'm missing in all of this.
All the way back to the beginning, or the catalyst for Alyssa Mercante trying to contact Smash JT's wife?
I guess
I mean, I could go months back if you want, but
I mean, I guess the very beginning, but it doesn't have to be any like in 5 sentences or less.
So the catalyst that sparks,
like X, like person A did some like this B that resulted in C.
Okay, so dude who created DEI detected, Cabritas Rambo, he created a Steam group called Sweet Baby Inc. Detected, which was this was using information on their own website. I need to keep that in mind because it's public information. They technically didn't break any laws.
Yes.
They used their website and said, Sweet Baby Inc. worked on these games, and we don't like what they did in these games, relating it to things like DEI and story manipulation and things like that. And so what Cabritas Rambo was trying to do with like-minded individuals is say, hey, we don't like what this company did to the games that we were really excited about, and here are the other games that they worked on.
So when you say games that they worked on, games that they were like actively developing, or games that they were just excited to play?
So they were narrative consultancy. So at that point, they had a person in the writing room, roughly is what that means. They did get paid for other things like basically consulting on whether or not to have diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, in the game and whatnot. But I believe as part of the contract, as we've learned now, they needed to have a dedicated person in the writing room to vet all the stuff that they were doing. So, for example, in God of War Ragnarok, the Sweet Baby employee for that one, I can't remember her name off the top of my head. I think it's Alana Pierce. No, different person. They were the ones that recommended Angerboda be made black.
Okay. I'm following. Keep going.
Mm-hmm. No, you said you wanted it in 5 sentences. So that's ultimately what started it. And
Okay.
then the reaction was games journalists immediately wanted to basically lynch Cabrutus Rambo for doing that. Because how dare he show what we actively are putting on our own website. And this is what sparked games journalists lashing out at gamers again, like they did in the previous Gamergate. Hence why they're calling it Gamergate 2.0.
Okay.
And it's basically games journalists once again waging war, some might say, against gamers or consumers of these games who are dissatisfied with whatever happened in that game. So some of the biggest examples that I've been given are Angerboda in God of War Ragnarok, as well as, I guess, I haven't confirmed this. I know the ending to Spider-Man 2 was also heavily Sweet Baby Inc. involved, but I guess they also had to, quote, uglify Mary Jane in Spider-Man 2. I don't know that because I haven't played Spider-Man 2 yet.
Same. So if I'm understanding correctly, people got pissed off because a person decided to call out changes to DEI
changes to games.
Okay. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people of the show know that I am a huge advocate for DEI, and it's something that I'm always going to be an advocate for. However, when it comes to gaming, people have this really cool thing called creative expression.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to remember that video games are an outlet for people to remove themselves from reality. If depending on, I would say, depending on the genre, the setting, what kind of a game is trying to be conveyed and marketed, there will be instances where, yeah, DEI makes sense. And then there are going to be others where, no, why does it completely matter? It is it is a large group of many different people who are expressing their creative freedoms, as they have every right to do so, to represent characters, how they interpret it. And obviously there are several layers of people who have to agree and sign off and say, yes, this is final, this is what we're doing. So this just sounds
let me
little
interject here for a second and ask you a question.
Okay.
If that company that was doing the creative consultancy and trying to make active changes to a particular game, what would you say if the other people in the writing room disagreed with that sentiment and instead wanted to keep going in the direction that they were going? Let me give you 2 scenarios here.
Okay.
One, democratic process rules out in the writing room, and they all make their opinions known. They decide, we're not going to go in this particular direction. We're not going to make Angerboda black. We're instead going to make her a redhead. And the democratic process goes through. Majority of the writers' room wants to keep it that way. They go through. So that's scenario 1. 2, person gets upset because their DEI inclusion is turned down. So their answer to that is to go to that person's boss or to that writing room's boss and immediately start saying how they're underrepresented and nobody's listening to them and they're a victim, in order to get the entire writing room to change their opinions and go in their direction. And if that doesn't work, they immediately go to the marketing team and start immediately telling every possible horror story they can possibly do to show that this game will not do well in order to get the company itself to agree with them and thus change it. Which do you think should happen? The democratic process or the forced process?
The democratic process, because and to some extent, Adam, I'm going to say all of this, like even in those two scenarios, there are going to be case by case bases.
Sure.
Like that was very, like those were great examples, but vague enough.
Well, they're not examples. These are the legitimate words of the owner of Sweet Baby Inc. And I will send you the video. We probably can't run it right now, but because it's like 20 minutes long. But she gave a speech at GDC where she told people this is exactly what you need to do in order to get your DEI in video games.
Well, Adam, ultimately, I'm trying to arrive to my point, and
Sure.
that is, this sounds a little too... This makes people who advocate and truly advocate for appropriate DEI look bad, because what was done was
right.
Probably one of the most unprofessional things that I hear of on a consistent basis.
This is why
it's really disheartening.
Sure. Well, and this is why you and I have had discussions in the process. Why I have actually stated this is like, yes, you claim to be an advocate for DEI, but as I've said with you, and I'll say here, if you were the DEI rep in that writing room, I wouldn't have a problem because you actually give a shit. You give a shit enough that I actually think you probably wouldn't even consider yourself or advertise yourself as a DEI representative. You would just do it. And it would make sense, and it wouldn't interfere with the stories or any of the complaints that are being made. And that's where I tend to disagree with you just in the concept of like you being the DEI rep, because you actually, do care. But I can see where you're coming from.
There's just enough people online who genuinely think that they are doing good, that they are representing the underrepresented, which I can sit here and, after just having completed a master's level course on minority groups and underrepresented populations as it pertains to counseling, I can sit here and say, thank you, I appreciate it. You went about it the wrong way and did something just really, really, really unnecessary and just really, like, I guess not to be overcomplicated, just stupid. You just did something really stupid.
That's why in a lot of cases I'm so happy. Like, you weren't here for for that episode, but I did talk to you about this when it actually happened, because it was so beautiful to see. Like, brings a tear to my eye. Is the second that a lot of this started, and people started to speak out against Sweet Baby Inc. supporters, then we got to hear the opinion of people we don't ever get to hear the opinion of. And that is, when a game is being advertised or whatever, who are we hearing from? The director, the art lead, the gameplay lead, all of them. These were regular, run-of-the-mill, average Joe, 9-to-5 game developers that were coming out. Now, some of them protected, because obviously they had jobs in a lot of the companies that are utilizing Sweet Baby Inc. But they did come out and eventually just say, look, we just want to make games. Like, that's all we want to do. We don't like these community managers who are speaking for us and talking a bunch of shit to fans of our games. We don't agree with what's being done in the writing room or whatever. We don't like these people. We associate with them because they're just that one person at the water cooler that you associate with at work. And we go home to our families, and all we want to do is make games. And thankfully, a lot of those people are still maintaining presences online and saying, this is the way it is in this particular company. And if you say any, like, for example, one of them unfortunately can't say anything anymore, but they were formerly of Ubisoft. and Ubisoft has 2 games that are going to be coming out this year that are Sweet Baby Inc. involved, and eventually the person had to stop because we're guessing, Ubisoft didn't appreciate that. And so they were basically saying, like, this is the situation that we're in. We don't like it either, but sometimes you have to deal with it because this is what you have at your job. We've all had shitty situations at our jobs, right? We've all had to clean the toilet at the McDonald's, right?
And folks, if you've ever had to clean a toilet at a restaurant, barf. Like, that's just PTSD alone.
Yeah, the second worst is a gas station, and I've done that one. So,
Adam, I appreciate you like re-explaining all of that to me. I got a bit lost, but those are just my thoughts and feelings. Like, y'all, I super appreciate those who advocate for the underrepresented. I really do. I really, really appreciate anybody who tries to give a voice to the voiceless. Make sure that it's just make sure that it's appropriate and that you're not necessarily making it harder for things like DEI to continue to remain relevant.
Or as you and I have said in numerous conversations, make good characters that just so happen to be DEI entries,
and not make a big freaking deal about it.
Yeah.
I think a really good example, I don't know if you two have seen Inside Out 2 yet.
Not yet, no.
I
did see it broke records, but that's all I've seen.
Essentially, there is a Muslim represented character, but it is not forced. She's just there.
Okay. Well,
done.
That's good.
That's it. Because the focus of the movie is still very much Riley and her emotions and the new emotions she's experiencing as she enters puberty, and that was it.
I will ask just one question, and I'm gonna encourage you not to spoil. Is the anxiety emotion as bad as you and I were worried?
Bad in what sense?
Because I think the conversation that we had was that it was going to be misrepresenting anxiety.
Oh no, it represents anxiety so well that it made me.
Or it was like it would be anxiety on steroids or something like that.
No, it's anxiety as a 13-year-old girl would experience in the context of the movie. Very well done.
That's all I need to hear. So with that's it for the Sweet Baby Inc. nonsense. So thankfully we're done with all of that. But we unfortunately are not done with controversy, as May had plenty of it. The next one that we have to go into is Pokemon Go. Because
this is actually one that I was super cognizant for. So yes. I have thoughts.
Yeah, because you and I talked about it quite a bit too. Because I was talking to you as well as coworkers who, while working, were doing Pokemon Go. I'm not naming names. Amazon, it's never happening. So at that point, in case people don't know or have lived under a rock, Pokemon Go was a thing. And Pokemon Go decided to introduce an avatar update where they were going to, quote, the premise was that they were going to give more options in terms of avatar creation. And instead, I think it's safe to say we got nothing but meme bait from it. So much so that when I actually did a mini cast on this, people actually got mad at me that I used a lot of the meme bait pictures in the actual mini cast. Particularly the one that I'm about to share on the screen right now, if it actually lets me do it. And it might not, I don't know. But basically, if you've seen this image, it is the girl in the Mewtwo outfit that came out from the Avatar update quite masculine in some cases, and also losing a lot of her female features. And it's not going to work, so I'm just going to go ahead and put it in the group so you guys can check it out there. Just give me a second. I don't know what's going on with Discord right now, but there you go. So that's one of the ones that got brought up. The other one that I particularly liked was the joke in reference to the Powerpuff Girls. Specifically, the episode, if people remember, where a bunch of thugs decided to dress up as the Powerpuff Girls. I found that particularly funny. But I think Brinton can actually say this better than me. This didn't go over very well. Safe to say.
No, it did not.
And so much so that it actually caused quite a bit of an exodus from Pokemon Go. I can't specifically speak to the numbers, but I can tell you all the coworkers that I have no longer play. And it's actually kind of sad, because one of the things that was actually kind of fun at the beginning of shifts was listening to what they captured in the previous shift. So like they'd be talking about how they got a Hitmonlee in the middle of nowhere while doing their deliveries, and they hadn't caught that particular Hitmonlee at that point. And now none of them play it. It's kind of sad. I guess my question is, Brinton, do you still... Well, I don't think you play Pokemon Go anymore, but I don't think it's because of this.
No, I still play Pokemon Go.
Oh, you do still play. Okay, my bad. So
yes, I'm taking a screenshot of what my avatar looks like and putting it into Discord, so that way you all have something to reference as I talk about it.
Something tells me this avatar update affected you quite well, or quite a bit.
I hate it.
Okay, so give me a second. Well, first of all, they gave you gray hair. What the fuck? At least, no, that's goggles, isn't it?
Yeah, those are goggles. I do have gray hair in real life, so it works.
Yeah. Even then...
It looks fine, Brinton, but I've never seen your original avatar, so I don't know. But
yeah,
I know, it's not a...
Now, I had seen a few of my coworkers' avatars before the update, and it didn't do them justice at all. Like, if I actually had a Pokemon Go account, I'd be pissed.
I play with one of my coworkers. We work allows us to use work time to go do 30 minutes of exercise 3 times a week. So we just walk the block for half an hour and play Pokemon Go 3 times a week while
I find it funny because you're not the first one that I've heard that's done stuff like this, where they've mandated that and that was their reaction.
Yeah, my all the supervisors make fun of us, and I don't really care. So to use his words because he didn't play while I was recovering from surgery, and he logged into the game for the first time after this update. He essentially took one look at himself and said, "Why do I look like a lesbian?"
I'm sorry, I'm not meaning to laugh because here's the thing, that's kind of what happened, is that all of a sudden your avatar looks nothing like you. That's a lot of the contrast that I've seen.
Well, he took one look at mine and he said, "Why do you look like a girl?"
Yeah, you know what? Now that I'm looking at it, I can kind of see that, but I will say it's not as bad as the worst I've seen. I will say that, at least, Brinton.
No, I'll agree with that. Some of the examples you've shown, 100% oh my gosh. But for some reason, this update made the feminine rigs more masculine and the masculine rigs more feminine. And I don't know why, after a lot of people clearly, as they have shared to social media, I don't know why Pokemon Go hasn't gone back and has been maybe let's look into this more.
Well,
but
I might have.
Go ahead.
I might have an answer for you.
Please.
The company that made the Avatar update shut its doors shortly.
For fuck's sake!
Yep.
Of course they did.
Now, thankfully, a viewer corrected me on this, because I was actually, when I did the Pokemon Go video, I had said the wrong company name. And I'm actually bringing it up right now because I don't want to screw it up again. But they did clarify on what the company's name was that I actually got wrong. And I'm looking it up right now because I've got that one. amidst a Square Enix video, so I'm having to go through a bunch of ones. But yeah, he corrected me on the company, but the company that did that was eventually, like, they had to shut their doors. They were immediately shut down right after. So that's why that hasn't happened. And from what I understand, speaking future talk, Niantic has basically doubled down on the Avatar update, and they have no plans to fix it.
Of course they don't.
Here's the company's name. Very, Very Spaceship. They were the ones that actually did the Avatar update.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
That's Very, Very Spaceship. That just is the ice. I feel like I'm under a mountain of cherries on this like ice cream sundae.
Right. And what was the company that I said? I've got the article up, and I'm just double checking it. But yeah, it wasn't the right company who actually implemented it. And yeah, it looks to me like Pokemon is not, or Niantic at least, is not interested in fixing this. In fact, they are more interested in their future projects than they are fixing this Avatar update. So, sorry,
well,
guys.
I hate it.
Really hoping, but it's not happening.
No, I hate the update. It, no matter how many like configurations or edits or changes that I've made, I've discarded them all because I just keep looking worse and worse with every attempt that I make. Does it stop me from enjoying the game? No. I still enjoy playing Pokemon Go.
Well, and in that vein, there is actually some arguments that are being made by detractors that I think are relevant here in the fact of, like, yeah, you don't have to like the Avatar update, but what's the real purpose of the game? It's the Pokemon. It's not necessarily the Avatar. And in some cases, a lot of those players, they stuck around because they don't really give a shit what their avatar looks like. In fact, one of my coworkers was one of those same people. Like, they really just didn't give a shit. They literally were in the same outfit that they started the game with, but the thing they cared about was their Pokemon collection. And so at that point,
and that's where I'm at too.
And at that point, like, I can see where people are mad because they like their avatar customization, but they also are mad at Niantic because they dropped the ball on what the purpose of this game actually was. Instead of worrying about avatar customization, they should have been worrying about, maybe their Pokemon community events, which are still, to my knowledge, still have issues when they try to execute them. Or being able to get, specific Pokemon, or expanding the amount of places where you can get specific Pokemon. They still haven't done that. Like, there's a myriad of other complaints that I've seen Go players have that could have been fixed that have nothing to do with player avatars. They all have to do with Pokemon.
Yeah. Niantic is very much centered on, like, let's do an avatar update. How about no? Nobody cares for an avatar update. It's exactly what you said. The game, like, at this point, I'm just more just keeping my eye out for events and opportunities for, I really would like to catch this Pokemon. I'm going to make sure I'm playing that day. Otherwise, the game is lacking severely. And it's very, very, very obvious that Niantic does not care about its fan base. It does not care about its players. And they keep implementing changes and, between quotation marks, quality of life that nobody wants, nobody has asked for, and everything that we have asked for, or not me specifically, but things players have asked for.
I shit you not. I actually found an iPhone on eBay that they had cut off their internet, or they basically had destroyed the online card in the iPhone pre-Pokemon Go update, and they were able to still somehow get Pokemon Go to still work, and they were selling that phone on eBay for, I think the minimum bid was $1,500, and they had bids up to $5,000 on that phone. I shit you not. I wish I still had the image of it, but it existed.
Huh. Okay, then.
It immediately reminded me of, like, when people would sell the phones that had Flappy Bird on them when Flappy Bird got taken off of the Apple Store. It's like, holy shit. Like, this is ridiculous, but this is how important to some players this is. So I can totally understand it. The only relevance I have is with another game, but before I get into that story, Alex, do you have anything to add here?
Not really. I was
Do
probably
you think
going to.
ultimately this was a bad decision?
Yeah, kind of. Just because I kind of have to agree. At least the ones you showed me are kind of ugly, but I also have to just kind of come down to the fact that, like, well, the main draw of the game is still about walking around and catching Pokemon more
Yeah.
than it is about your particular avatar. So it's like I could understand being a little more upset if this was a much
Mhm.
more customizable avatar kind of game, like certain RPGs might be, but I figured it was just
It
pretty.
has a customization suite, but it's really bare. At least up until the Avatar update, it was really bare bones.
Yeah, I kind of figured it just because it's just not that kind of game. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, just play it for the Pokemon. That's the more enjoyable
I mean,
aspect.
if
And
anything, like I guess that they have a bunch of like Pokemon based clothes and accessories that you can put on. That just to me that just encourages me as a player to never look into those because I'm not going to be interested in the avatar that I have, kind of thing.
Mhm.
But yeah, the example that I have is a little bit more complex than this, but immediately when I saw the story, this is what I thought of. So, do either of you remember an old MMO by the name of Star Wars Galaxies?
No.
No.
So, this was before the New Republic. This was back in the EverQuest days. Before WoW even existed. There was Star Wars Galaxies. And Star Wars Galaxies was an MMO set in the original trilogy between episodes 4 and 5. So it was basically like where the story was set is Luke had just barely blown up the Death Star. And you were
Oh,
playing a
cool.
character that was going through, the Star Wars universe, and you had MMO combat and things like that, but really what you did was jobs. And jobs were the way that you kind of excelled in the game and were able to become things like smugglers and stormtroopers and things like that. You'll notice that I haven't said Jedi in there. Here's why. You could technically create a force in the early days of Galaxies, you could create a force sensitive character. But because of the time frame that it was in, they made it extremely difficult to create a force sensitive character. And by difficult, I mean when you logged into the game for the first time, you had specific requirements that you were never aware of, that were in the back end of the game, that you had to fulfill, that people had to create mods to be able to expose, which basically said like you had to excel as being a dancer, you had to excel as being a politician, you had to excel at being a bounty hunter. And once you did all of those things, then you would become a quote Jedi. Now, does that mean you immediately like grow a lightsaber out of nowhere? No. Your character is just considered to be force sensitive, and I believe they actually do give you a quest where you can go out and craft a lightsaber. Now, I don't think I'm emphasizing this enough. How difficult was it to become force sensitive? For
Sounds
some
really hard.
players, it took years. Literal years to complete all of the requirements that their specific character had. Some of which it took so long that they literally got it the day before what a lot of Galaxies players consider to be the game-breaking patch. And it's a very similar story to this one, Brenton. Because
Okay.
you remember how I said how complex it was to become force sensitive in Galaxies? Literally overnight, you now had a class selection system in Galaxies. And one of the classes was Jedi. So all the hard work that your character had put in was flushed down the toilet, and it was as simple as a mouse click. Now, a part of the Star Wars timeline that is supposed to have virtually no Jedi in it has nothing but Jedi. literally millions of Jedi. And that's when people left Galaxies, and ultimately what spelled the utter demise of Galaxies. It was so bad they even tried to retcon the Trials of Obi-Wan update that killed the game. And they still didn't get anybody to come back. That's immediately what I thought of when this happened. It's like literally overnight, the entire game has changed. And now all of the hard work that maybe you have put into your avatar or to your Pokemon is utterly worthless to some people. Now, to some others, it's not, but I can totally understand when people have that viewpoint. It's happened before in games.
All right, then.
This story time has been brought to you by Geritol. I'm sorry. Shit, seriously, like look it up. Like I actually knew a guy in a guild who literally, the reason I made the specific statement that I did, he had attained Force sensitivity the night before the Trials of Obi-Wan update. He had worked his ass off. He was so proud of his accomplishment, and Star Wars, Sony Entertainment, what was it? Sony Online Interactive took that away. He quit that day. He was that pissed.
Don't blame him.
Yeah, really, don't blame him. So at that point, any final thoughts that we want to add to this Pokemon Go update? I will ultimately say that I really hope Niantic sees the numbers, because, you know, as much as we're talking about the creative aspect of the gaming industry, it is still a market. And in order to be able to continue to make these creative ventures, you have to have the money to do so. And an exodus from a game, to me, has only ever meant one thing. That game / that company is going to lose a butt ton of money. And either they learn from that and either start re-implementing some of the things they took out, or they go and fix it. Or they either re-implement it or they double down, kind of like how Niantic is going right now, and basically watch the ship go under. So I'm going to optimistically say I hope Niantic eventually learns from this and either retcons the Avatar update or tries to fix it in another way and try to basically salvage the relationship that they had with the Pokemon players, or Pokemon Go players. But realistically, I think the ship is going to go down. I think, and I even said it in the video, like, Niantic has had a good run with Pokemon Go, but obviously their focus is on things like Monster Hunter Online. So at that point, I don't think that they even care. I think they've literally looked at Pokemon Go as like, this ship has sailed and we don't care anymore. So that's my final thoughts. Alex, Brinton, go.
I agree with you. Done.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't like seeing companies make stupid decisions. If anybody has followed these podcasts and seen me talk in favor of Square Enix, you know I don't want to see companies go under. I've seen enough companies go under. I don't want to see any more. So, Alex, any final thoughts?
Nothing more from me.
All right. So the next one that we have is, unfortunately, more bad news in the gaming industry, but kind of expected. As Xbox, for the second time this year, has had to issue layoffs, and in this case, shut down studios. And in this case, involving Bethesda studios. Remember that Bethesda acquisition that's worked out so well for Xbox in the last few years? Brinton, Alex, you remember that? That I totally
great.
said was a great idea?
It's been the best thing in gaming since 1985.
Uncle Phil is the richest sumbitch on the planet Earth.
I have never met a more innovative innovator in my years.
He is totally not drunk at your Christmas party right now. He's not.
You know, that's a really fitting simile considering it's July.
I know, right? Well, I mean, you know, the Christmas and July parties actually happen, or at least they used to on ABC Family.
That is exactly where I was getting at.
So, unfortunately, Xbox had to shutter some studios in order to stem the hemorrhaging that had been happening from games like Starfield and also Fallout 76. And unfortunately, the ones that actually felt this were not, in some cases, studios that we wanted to see shut down. So first of all, there was Arkane Austin. Arkane Austin, I have to clarify this once again to people because apparently I didn't clarify it enough in the video that I did, but Arkane Austin is not the people that made Dishonored. They helped with it, but Arkane Austin is more responsible for the game Redfall. They are a subsidiary of Arkane Lyon. For those who don't know, the Dishonored developer is a French developer. So this is an extension, and Austin was responsible for the game Redfall, which unfortunately didn't do very well in its own right. And so they had to shutter that one. The second studio that they had to shutter, I'm going to keep the big one for last, but so we had we had Arkane Austin. We also had I have to bring up all of the studios again. The next one was actually based around, it was basically a lot of online aspects. And actually, even though the studio shut down, their staff basically got moved into Bethesda because they will now be working with the Elder Scrolls Online team. And that is Roundhouse Games. Roundhouse Games will be joining ZeniMax Online to work on the Elder Scrolls Online. Then the third one that I was mentioning was Alpha Dog Studios. This was an entirely VR division of Bethesda, and they had worked on Mighty Doom. Unfortunately, they had to shutter their offices, and light at the end of the tunnel, both them, as well as employees from Arkane Austin, were then brought into Bethesda, or basically offered to join Bethesda itself to work on games like Fallout 76 and Starfield. The same games that shuttered their studios. Good on ya. But that's not the one that everybody noticed and everybody was pissed off about. I saved it for last, and that is Tango Gameworks. Tango Gameworks is a Japanese studio founded by Shinji Mikami, the guy who started Resident Evil, and ultimately is responsible for many what some may consider to be successful franchises. The Evil Within, which got a sequel, and technically, what I'm hearing internally, was going to get another.
Oh, wow.
Also, they were going, well, it was early stages. They were trying to get it okayed, and then the merger happened. So,
oh, shit.
They also worked on another game that caught a lot of intrigue, which was Ghostwire Tokyo. And
ooh, that was a goodie.
Yeah. But that's not the one that everybody else noticed that I did, which was Hi-Fi Rush. You know, the game that came out last year and was very much a darling at many award shows, so much so that Uncle Phil crossed those console war lines and allowed for Hi-Fi Rush to be released on PlayStation consoles. So Tango also got shut down. Now, unlike Arkane Austin and Alpha Dog and Roundhouse Games, nobody at Tango was moved over into Bethesda. No, they just shut the studio down. I should also point out that, as if to say the writing on the wall, Shinji Mikami left Tango a month before this happened, almost as if he knew what was coming. And to make it even worse, when asked about this decision, our buddy Matt Booty over at Microsoft gave us a very intriguing quote about why they shut down studios like Tango Gameworks. Because, and I quote, "We need smaller games that give us prestige and awards." I'm just gonna pause right there. I wish I still had this, but unfortunately the person on Twitter took it down. A Hi-Fi Rush developer put up a picture after this quote had happened, basically showing in his office all of the awards that Hi-Fi Rush had earned in the previous year. Need I also mention, it also won at the Game Awards last year. Just to give you guys a few examples. Best Audio Design at the 2023 Game Awards. Best Animation at the 2024 BAFTA Game Awards. Various Game of the Year awards from various publications, both online and otherwise. It won awards at the New York Game Awards. Specifically, it won the Tin Pan Alley Award for Best Music in a Game. For those who don't know, Hi-Fi Rush was a Devil May Cry hack and slash that was rhythm-based. And by the way, fucking fun. I really wish we could bring on our buddy Rising Sun because he's also played Hi-Fi Rush. And we can both attest. That is a fun-ass game. So, 26 total industry awards Hi-Fi Rush won. But no, we have to shut down this company because we need smaller games that give us prestige and awards. Thoughts?
Just royally sucks.
It dumbest. What?
Absolutely sucks.
Just taking back what I was saying in sarcasm earlier. One of the dumbest things to ever be dumbed in my 33 years.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had a chance to play Hi-Fi Rush yet. Amongst school and admittedly prioritizing the MMOs I'm playing.
Yep.
And I still very much intend on playing it.
You should. It's amazing.
I've heard glowing reviews, not just from you, but from lots of other people. So it just makes me sit here and continue to say Phil Spencer has no idea what he's doing anymore.
Almost like I've been saying that for years.
Xbox is going downhill, and it's going downhill fast.
Yep.
And it's not slowing down anytime soon.
Nope. He's got a lot of momentum. It's just not in the right direction.
It really isn't. And
it's almost like you bought a bunch of sinking ships.
Which is what I've been saying for a while now.
Oh no, this podcast has been screaming for a while.
He's flying the airplane directly into the ground. In fact, it's already in the ground. It's making its way to the center of the earth. And he's sitting there and he's like, Xbox is amazing. And I'm swinging my dick around because we got the best console on the fucking planet. And it's sir, you're literally in the core of the earth. You're literally dead.
Wait till next month. It gets better.
Oh, great. I can't believe this is everything
I can't think of a better teaser for the month for the June podcast than that, because there you go.
I can't believe this is what was going on while I was high off my ass.
And you had a reason to be.
Trust me.
Uncle Phil
Trust me. Trust me.
I literally
Don't
need
get your tonsils out.
I need somebody to animate a GIF of just like, oh boy, Uncle Phil is asleep at the wheel, and exactly edit the airplane scenario that Brenton just described. Just like pointed directly down at the ground, and then just basically like Yuki from Fruits Basket, just like, oh god, Uncle Phil's drunk at the wheel again. I need that in my life now. And yes, it needs to be Yuki from Fruits Basket, Alex. Nobody facepalms better than Yuki.
Okay.
I would love if somebody did a GNRO animated of just little moments of when any one of us. Oh man, I would love any little moments between the three of us where one of us, and I know all three of us at some point have been very just over the top, loud, just what the fuck?
Yep. Yeah, no, it needs to happen.
This was my moment. Somebody please animate it.
Yes, this needs to happen now. I need it in my life. And Rising Sun actually made a good recommendation that it needs to be AI drawn. Because the funniest thing is like, you bring this up. I shit you not, Brenton, 3 files in my hard drive right now, all labeled Rising Sun's Bizarre Adventure, Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3.
Alrighty.
So, Rising Sun, when we have been doing like the podcast like AI and anime or whatever, I don't know why this happens, but like with him and me, I always get child aggro. And so I will go and take care of the kids because they got to go potty or whatever. And he just decides to go off on a storytelling spree. So much so he doesn't actually remember what he said in the previous ones. And I literally, when I edit these podcasts, you don't hear them because I took them out and I intend to do something with them. And,
ooh, I cannot wait.
By the way, I have Rising Sun's approval. He's the one who's actually saying, yeah, you should totally animate it with AI even. Like, we should totally do that. So there you go. And in fact, I look forward to when we eventually get down to do another like MMO roundtable discussion, Brenton, that I get Kid aggro and he just regales you with the weirdest storytelling bullshit you've ever possibly heard. And you just get to sit there and listen to it.
I look forward to that. And also,
I will come back and you'll be like, my life is forever changed by this.
Can I just make a note that we've completely deviated from the story because it's just essentially Phil Spencer
bullshit.
It's just and yes, this is a weird segue that I am intentionally making. It's just another Phil Spencer bullshit story of his bullshittery that we're, at least to some extent, I'm just like, I just kind of sit here now and I'm like, oh, a Phil Spencer story? What is it this time? Did something close down? Did he buy another failing studio?
Yep.
Is he swinging his dick around about another game nobody believes is actually going to do well?
That's okay.
It's one of those.
Next
it's one of those 3 scenarios.
He got to have you brought up, throwing your massive dick around. He got his face slapped by the biggest dick in the room, which just so happened to belong to Nintendo.
Ooh.
So
that could just be.
Well,
I feel that
and Capcom. Let's put it that way.
I have a feeling I'm going to make a very inappropriate statement, and when that time comes, so be prepared.
I might have to actually dig out the clip from Redo of Healer and just put like Capcom logos and Nintendo logos on it, and put Uncle Phil's face where the girl got slapped by a dick. So,
oh my god!
I'm just saying, it might actually have to happen.
I don't have anything else I want to say about this particular story. I've said everything that I've wanted to say, and I guess the only additional thing I could state is I'm sorry for this game developer.
Yeah.
And this studio that, does the big thing and really gets recognized for something incredible, and then to be told it's not good enough.
Well,
you're done.
And unfortunately, it got a little bit worse because the other part that I neglected to mention here, but also is mentioned in the article you guys can check out. So, like I said, there was talk of a, what was it? The Evil Within 3 that they were in like early concept to be able to do. Hi-Fi Rush 2 was also in discussions, and it was farther along in that process, way farther along than Evil Within 3. In fact, it was probably going to get greenlit before Tango got shut down. Because one of the things
not shocking.
One of the things they were basically using as kind of an advertising piece is because the engine has already been set up, that a sequel could just be done in engine. Whereas, like with Evil Within 1 and Evil Within 2, I believe they did actually have to transition some engine parts. So at that point, it was a little bit more costly, but this would have cost virtually nothing, and they could have turned the game around in less than a year. You could have gotten Hi-Fi Rush 2 in 2025 easily if they had gotten it okayed. Now, granted, it probably wouldn't have been 2025. It probably would have been 2026 because they would want to polish it. But that's the part that irritates me the most, is that Microsoft was they had gotten far enough where Microsoft was aware that they were strongly considering doing it. And they still shut down the studio for the reasons that. So, yeah, to me, that's just Xbox saying, we don't like money. We don't like it at all. Because I still have, I don't have the numbers on me, but I can guarantee you long-term, Hi-Fi Rush has made more money than fucking Starfield ever did for you. And I know that Todd Howard is constantly pushing that we're going to have yearly DLC packs for Starfield. It's going to be awesome. But when your population on your game at the highest peak for a game like that hits 800,000 and then roughly goes down by 90% the following week, yeah, your game's done. As far as anybody is concerned. Starfield is dead, whereas Hi-Fi Rush was still earning money, and earning even more money when you moved it over into PlayStation consoles. So, yeah, Uncle Phil, you hate money. But let's let Alex have the last word here, because I want to bring this up again. Alex, it's not just that the studios were shut down. It's that Matt Booty, that's literally his name, by the way. The guy who made these decisions, Matt Booty. That's his name. He instead wanted to focus on games that would give him prestige and awards. So I'm going to give Alex the final word on this in regards to that. What do you think of Matt Booty so far?
Oh my god.
I think Matt Booty's got his head up his booty.
Oh my gosh.
Matt Booty is in serious need of a booty call?
Yeah.
And by booty call, I mean a brain. If
Yeah,
I only had a brain.
Wasn't Phil Spencer the one, though, that brought Xbox back from the brink after the whole after the launch of the One, the Kinect disaster and all that? Wasn't he the one?
Phil was
or was he
part
the
of
one
that.
I was part of it, okay.
Mm-hmm. Phil was part of that.
Yeah.
The what you might be thinking of is one of the higher ups that got fired. He was the guy who basically said that, like, if you don't like all of the features of the Xbox One, well, there's an answer for you. It's called the Xbox 360. That guy got fired. But no, Phil was there during the Xbox One disaster. That's why I find it so funny that in the podcast earlier this year that he did, that was an Xbox Devoted podcast, where he had to openly admit the mistakes that he had made during that whole debacle. And had to admit that the Xbox One lost to the PS4.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, he was there. And I find all of this wholly appropriate, don't you?
Yeah. Xbox has fallen so hard.
Oh, good lord. So it has fallen so hard that I've already started to hear rumors, and we'll probably talk more about them next month, that a lot of people don't know this, but Xbox, or Microsoft in particular, has been making massive improvements to their Windows Store. I know Alex doesn't believe that, but that's what they're saying. Long story, Brenton, long story.
I'll take your word for it.
It involves Super Lucky's Tale and Alex never being able to fulfill that dream.
That's a good game.
It is. Too bad he didn't get to play it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Eventually.
Yeah, you played it eventually.
When it first launched through the Windows Store, the game would always stop functioning after a couple hours and would never launch again. It was such a pain in the ass.
And I actually looked it up. It was a common bug. with Super Lucky's Tale. One that, by the way, got fixed in new Super Lucky's Tale when it came out for the Switch. So it was a common bug, and it was more associated with the Xbox than it was the game itself. So that's with Xbox and with the Xbox engine that they were using for the Windows Store at the time. So at that point, it's just all unfortunate. But yeah, they've been basically saying that they've been doing a lot of improvements to the Windows Store, enough so that the presumption is there will not be a next generation a next box, so to speak. There won't be a next generation Xbox. Instead, Xbox will become a platform like Steam, and they will use the Windows Store in order to do that. And what makes it even worse is that in recent time, Phil Spencer's basically doubling down on Game Pass, which is probably not the decision that he should be making, considering that Game Pass is being heavily criticized, not just within the industry, but also amongst the consumers. But he's doubled down on Game Pass. So it's looking more and more likely that instead the Windows Store will become Xbox, and they'll just basically try to be a Steam-esque platform.
I mean, honestly, I don't see that being a horrendously bad move, because they're not, like, they've completely lost a console war.
Well,
any further attempts are just going to be futile.
I agree with you. It could potentially be a bad move for Phil, because if that actually happens, then there's already a Windows Store president, and he's been doing all of these improvements. I have a feeling he will be kept in place, but Phil won't. So that might be the end for Phil Spencer at that point.
And that's perfectly fine.
Yeah, exactly. Uncle Phil, you're no longer in charge of the wheel. So that being said, I think Alex has hit the nail on the head. Let's go ahead and move into the last thing that we have, which thankfully, in some ways, is better news, because the June E3 event, if you want to call it that, actually started a week early in May, and so we can actually talk about it. And that was the Sony State of Play. And we got a number of games that were announced for this. Unfortunately, not a whole lot of them are games that you and I would, or that the three of us will be following. First of all, they announced the hero shooter Concord, which already has been getting similar complaints, in regards to things like God of War Ragnarok for DEI. So unfortunately, it's not necessarily getting the best press, but it does still have some backers behind it. So I'll give them that credit. But it is a hero shooter, so a lot of people are like, oh, look, Sony's trying to cash in on the Overwatch craze. So I don't know what to tell them about that. Good luck to Firewalk Studios. The biggest announcement that probably happened on this, or second biggest announcement on this State of Play, was that God of War Ragnarok is officially coming to PC this September. So that's actually a lot sooner than the industry predicted. They actually expected it to be next year, because usually the Sony or the PlayStation timetable for PC ports to the games is about a year or so after. So yes, they will be getting God of War Ragnarok, and the Valhalla DLC will be linked into that when it launches on PC. Any thoughts on that one, Brenton? Because I know you've played Ragnarok. Are you eager to play it on PC?
I actually didn't play Ragnarok.
Oh, you haven't played it yet? Okay, my bad.
No, I have not. Well,
I mean,
by
it makes
the time
sense financially. Like, God of War is profitable for them.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's cool that these PlayStation exclusives are coming to PC. That's totally fine. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
It's more school starting, and if I'm going to give attention to a game, it's going to be The War Within, because I did say I would play that, and like that I would play that with you. So I want to make sure I am playing it with you.
Right. And Alex, I don't think you have really a dog in the race, because God of War isn't necessarily a game you're interested in.
No.
So moving to the next game, we have Dynasty Warriors Origins. Now, I am happy that Koei Tecmo finally announced a game, because I believe the last one that they did was Wolong Fallen Dynasty, and that did fairly well. So after that, things went dark for Koei Tecmo, and there were some bad rumors basically saying the studio was shut down. And ultimately, they are not right, because we got Dynasty Warriors Origins. Here's my problem with it. I'm a Dynasty Warriors fan. I love Musou games. But one thing that I haven't really liked in recent Dynasty Warriors entries is that in previous Dynasty Warriors games, if neither of you have played them, you play as characters in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. So these are Chinese heroes that are almost godlike in some cases, in depending on the one you're talking about. But you would play as these characters kind of like a fighting game, because, fun fact, Dynasty Warriors actually started as a fighting game. And instead, you'd be playing as these characters going through their historical arc in the Romance of the Three Kingdoms. But since Dynasty Warriors 9, they've gone in a weird direction where instead they are having you create a player avatar. And much like how Dragon Ball FighterZ did this, your avatar takes control of the corresponding historical figures, but you still get to customize this avatar and be able to go in unique directions and order the troops and all that stuff. And so this is why I'm actually kind of disappointed, because I just don't see the point in adding in an avatar, which means you have to create an unnecessarily big creation suite for it. And that's not why people play Dynasty Warriors. They play Dynasty Warriors to play as these heroic characters and modify the heck out of them so that they can destroy entire armies with one swing. So, little disappointed here as far as I'm concerned. Any other Dynasty Warriors fans here? I don't think so.
No.
Okay. So, I'm apparently in the only market on that one. The next one is an open world RPG called Infinity Nikki. It's going to be getting a beta test sometime in Q3 2024. And it actually is interesting because this has got attached former Zelda director Kentaro Tominaga. And it's basically just an open world dress up adventure for your avatar. And I believe it's mobile, but it might get console releases as well. So that was announced. The next big one is Where Winds Meet, which was also shown up, would get additional details at Gamescom of this year. Then we eventually got into the biggest announcement of the event, which was Marvel Rivals coming to console. That wasn't it. Marvel meets Overwatch was not it. Instead, it was Silent Hill 2 Remake. We got a full trailer. We got a release date for October 8th for PC and PS5. And people were immediately ecstatic and also very, very worried because they'd been making some changes to Silent Hill. I kind of wish we still had Romney here, because then we would be able to run these by him and see how he felt about it. Because if people don't remember, he hated the Silent Hill collection because of what it did to Silent Hill 2. And unfortunately, Silent Hill 2 Remake looks like it's going to be doing some of the same things. So they are going to be changing a lot. Sorry?
That's what I've heard, yeah.
Yeah, they're going to be changing a lot of the atmosphere of the game and the lighting, which was the two primary complaints that the Silent Hill 2 on the collection had. And I've seen imagery of it, and it does destroy it. It destroys the overall atmosphere that Silent Hill 2 was trying to create in that process. They have also destroyed one of the characters by basically giving her a complete redesign. For those who don't know, Silent Hill 2, unlike the first Silent Hill, which was kind of more of a horror romp, Silent Hill 2 is a game that tackles depression pretty hard, as a matter of fact. It actually was a game that kind of changed how Silent Hill worked and is probably the starting point of Silent Hill basically being this entity, not necessarily like this alternate hell world, but instead basically being an entity based on emotions rather than anything else. It's a weird Tumblr theory, and I don't know how best else to describe it, but it starts here as Silent Hill 2 heavily delves into the themes of depression and suicide. And one of the characters that they had, the leading woman, as a matter of fact, in there, they basically, I guess they've modified it so that as the game progresses, like she's supposed to be deathly skinny and always like teasing suicide in the game throughout. And I guess as the game progresses, she's going to get progressively fatter as things go along. And they're going to take a lot of the scenes that made her so iconic. Like, I guess there was a moment where she would, like, wave a knife at her throat, like a kitchen knife at her throat, and they're going to take all that stuff out because that would be too offensive. That
completely takes away the theme that was originally set when it came out the first time.
Right. Have you played Silent Hill 2, Brinton?
No,
Okay. The way you said that, I'm like, ooh, you could actually give us reference.
No, I'm just stating that the only reason why I can see somebody saying, "Oh, this is offensive," is because when it originally came out, suicide prevention wasn't a super heavily discussed topic as it is today.
In fact, a lot of people, I've actually seen numerous YouTube videos of various creators saying Silent Hill 2 is the game that ultimately got them to seek help.
And by taking that away in the remake, that's
a big claim. And on top, and then you basically trash on this life-changing event for them. Yeah, that's a great idea, Konami. Oh, and by the way, all of these changes, not necessarily made by the team Blooper, who is working on the remake. Instead, it is executive oversight from Konami. Our overlords have returned.
Cool.
I'm putting that cool right next to the Darth Vader music that just played. All right. Because Editor Drac is amazing that way.
Editor Drac is pretty amazing. Be sure to treat yourself, Editor Drac.
He's also kind of psychotic. I'm just gonna point that out.
Okay, well maybe take a break too while you're listening to this.
No!
So yeah, they made these changes. The other change that seems kind of unnecessary, but okay. They have like side characters in the Silent Hill games. I only played the first one. And the first one had a nurse that plays some significance in the plot, but eventually gets killed. And I'll leave it at that. She dies, and it's a pretty impactful moment in that game. There is a side character like that in this one, except it's, well, a hooker. And they decided to make changes to her too. So you'll notice that I'm saying, like, it's female characters that are getting changed, not male characters. And even in the trailer, people acknowledge this, that the main protagonist of the Silent Hill 2 remake, he's pretty much spot on. He's pretty much where they needed to go. It's just these female characters that they apparently had to change. And in the hooker's case, they had to make her look more, quote, conservative. Basically not wanting to offend hookers everywhere. And so they decided to make her look like, well, I guess people have been making a lot of comparisons to Grace Randolph from Fox News. And it's painfully accurate. I'll say that much. So really quick, I'm going to share some of these images in the Discord so you guys can actually see them. I'm going to try and keep the originals in mind as well, so you guys can see kind of the changes that they made. First things first is the hooker in question. This is how she looks in the original game. And spoilers for those who are going to get pissed at me for this. The presumption from the game, the reason that the main character, the guy, is in Silent Hill in the first place is because he killed her and left her in the back seat of his car. Just gonna let that sit there. And I'm trying to look for a accurate full body version of the prostitute character in the remake, but I'm not. Here we go. Here is one. So this is going to be the new hooker character in the game. So you can now see the more conservative design for her.
This angers me.
Yes. And I actually do agree with Silent Hill fans. It just feels unnecessary. It absolutely feels unnecessary. This is one of those things that I don't get had to change. Okay, so this is... Ignore the bottom two images, but the image on the upper right is the woman in question that is kind of the focal point of Silent Hill 2 that has the knife at her throat and all that. The left is her remake version, as she slowly becomes bigger throughout the game. I personally think that the models are half-assed Resident Evil 2 remake models. Honestly, I don't think that they're that great looking. I think the main character looks good, but I almost kind of feel like with what they have done with the other characters, feels like they half-assed it. They honestly didn't give that much thought into how these characters are going to look, and maybe that's because of the executive oversight that they had to deal with Konami. I don't know. But that's at least my presumption on this. Alex, you've been kind of quiet on this one. Have you seen the images?
I've seen them, yeah.
What do you think?
Okay. I can't remember what was the woman's name. The one in the red, the hooker, as you call her.
Let's see.
Shoot.
Give me a second and I can get it. Maria.
Was it Mary? I
Maria.
can't totally remember. Maria. Right. Okay. All right. I'll give her a bit more of a pass. I mean, it does kind of defeat the purpose because she's supposed to be theoretically a sex worker, but all right. That one's not so bad, but it does sound like by kind of going the opposite direction, you're with the other character, the bottom one you're talking about, the one who
Yes.
gets bigger. It does sound like you're going away from what the original story was, and that I don't quite understand.
Especially
very much.
when, again, I haven't played this game. It's actually on our list that me and Andrea want to tackle because we liked playing the first game. People have been screaming to play this game. And from what I have been able to glean in details, she actually gets more gaunt as the game progresses. And it's supposed to be the impression that she isn't eating because of the depression kind of thing.
Right.
And to me, that's making her get bigger and progressively fatter is more of a modern indication of not just depression, it can be other problems too, but the other idea is a lot better at conveying like severe depression, severe suicidal depression, is that you're basically just either killing yourself slowly or killing yourself quickly. It doesn't really matter. This is supposed to be an example. So this is the original game of more of the lighting, especially with the character that we're talking about. So like a lot of the stuff that you're seeing is somewhat very well lit. It's kind of grayish, but this is kind of the lighting that it's intended. It's very dark. It's very, very dank, very moldy kind of feel. And
which is how like when somebody says Silent Hill, that image that you just posted is exactly what comes to my mind.
Right. I mean, the perfect example here is, I don't know why this is in the Google Images search that I'm using, but I'm going to use it. This is from Silent Hill 1. And it basically conveys like this dark, dank hell dimension that the original Silent Hill was going for. And ultimately what the third game went for, because technically Silent Hill 2 is a sequel to, or Silent Hill 3 is a sequel to Silent Hill 1. Silent Hill 2 is its own thing. And I don't think it's ever been explored after that. So at that point, like, and I think partially because like it was so successful, Konami just didn't want to touch it because they didn't want to wreck it. But now they don't care. Now they're willing to remake it, and even with the collection, they wreck the lighting, they wreck the atmosphere, they wreck the ambiance, and it looks like they're going to do that too. Even in the a lot of the art that they're doing, the game is like, so this is a promotional poster that leaked with the release date. Just look how bright it is. It's supposed to be gray. I get that. But it's still pretty freaking bright compared to how the imagery that I'm showing you used to be in the previous game. So it's just not the correct direction at all. And that's actually basically how the public received it. Konami got lambasted by this and ultimately had to go radio silent. And Blooper came out and basically had to say to everybody, hey, look, we tried to do everything that you guys wanted, and we wanted to, but we kept getting tons and tons of mandates from Konami in Japan to change this, change that, or we won't approve it. And since the way Konami makes a lot of their contracts work, they don't approve it, it doesn't come out. Oh, and by the way, your company doesn't get paid. So at that point, all that hard work and all those hours that you put in, yeah, it was for nothing. So that's Silent Hill 2. Thankfully, we did not end on that somber note. We did get a Monster Hunter World sequel for PS5 and Xbox Series X, which is going to be Monster Hunter Wilds. So Capcom was very pleased to make more details off of that made known, because they only gave a teaser at the Game Awards. And the last thing that they basically stopped on was Team Asobi, which is a Middle Eastern developer, but I don't remember the country that they're from. They are working on, if people remember Astrobot from all of the PlayStation Eye games that they've done in recent years, they decided to make Astrobot its own IP. And so at that point, it looks like there's going to be a lot of customization, kind of like how Little Big Planet worked out, because you can put the Astrobots in various costumes, but you can also, and it also looks like you will be able to create levels in it. I'm not sure how restricted that's going to be or anything like that, but basically they're going to expand on Astro's Playroom and instead give him his own IP. And that's the last thing that it ended on. So, announcements that you guys liked. That was my
Astrobot.
Astrobot, yeah. Actually, what's funny is my older brother also liked that announcement. He hated both PlayStation Eye games. So,
Every single Astrobot game that I've played, and like especially the free one that came with your purchase of the PS5,
right,
I've loved them. So when I saw the trailer for this, I was super stoked.
Mm-hmm.
And will I be getting it day one? Maybe. We'll see.
I'm going to wait and get more information, because I do know that we're going to get this was an announcement trailer. We're going to get some additional information later this year. And I want to see more gameplay on this. Like, is this a Little Big Planet? Like, because it wouldn't be Media Molecule that's working on it. So would it be a full-on level creator like Little Big Planet was? Or is it just like, okay, you just get these customizable costumes, but we have like a story and all of that? And I'm more interested in that. If it's just a playroom, that's not enough to bring me in, honestly. But if there's like a full game behind it where, we get a plot, we get exploration into Astrobot, then I'm more involved.
Yeah, that's super fair.
Yep. I will say one positive that I got out of it probably was Monster Hunter Wilds. Just because I'm glad that Monster Hunter World is getting a successor, and Monster Hunter World was fun. I enjoyed my time on it, and eventually will go around to finishing it someday. Hopefully before the server shut down, and I don't have to go to like private servers or whatever. But I was excited for that one. The other one that I also didn't mention was Path of Exile 2, because I've been playing a lot of Path of Exile 1. And it looks like, according to the state of play, we will be getting a early access in late 2024 for it. So I might experiment with it. I'm not sure. Alex, any positives in there for you?
I think Infinity Nikki looks pretty interesting. Want to check that one out.
It does look interesting. I'm not sure the exact direction they're going with it, but it does look interesting. I'll give it that. Negatives for this. I mean, I think we're all pretty much in agreement. Silent Hill 2 Remake is looking to be a blunder, and that makes me really sad for Silent Hill fans, because, you know, they waited so freaking long for Silent Hill games. And granted, we still have a couple of other games that they can look forward to, but the 2 Remake was a big one. And already I've already seen, according to numbers, the pre-orders for Silent Hill 2 Remake are not the numbers that Konami want. Not anywhere near.
That is awful.
More awful for Blooper than Konami. Konami's just being idiots, but they're dragging Blooper into this because Blooper wanted a big project to be able to do, and they even had great idea. Like, from what I can tell from developer discussions, they had some great ideas for the remake and maybe even a future Silent Hill game, but Konami's not willing to listen to them. So,
well, in that case, it's they're. I'm not saying they're being set up to fail. However, you know, Konami's going to put all the blame on them, and it's cool.
Oh, they 100% will. And the best part is that no one will believe Konami. Instead, they will lash out at Konami, because Konami, unfortunately, you have a track record, and that track record is all over the internet. So nobody trusts you anymore. They trust when companies do good things with your IPs, and hopefully when you don't really involve yourselves that much, kind of like how you didn't with Way Forward and that Contra game. Because from what I can tell, your executive involvement wasn't that harsh in that process. So at that point, we trust Way Forward. We don't trust you. And that's why I have no problem telling people I've pretty much given up on a new Castlevania game, because this is what Konami will do. They will nitpick it. They will executive meddle in it every step of the way. And we will not get a Castlevania game out of it. We'll get some weird mishmash of a Battle Royale clone, because that's what's popular at the time. So I will also say that a negative for me was Dynasty Warriors Origins. But that's just simply because, like, I was very disappointed that they're going into this avatar creation direction, because the only reason that they are doing it, and I think even some Koei Tecmo devs have confirmed this, they're only doing it because the rest of the industry is. So they're not even remotely invested in making a really great character creation suite. They're just doing it because they think that they have to. And that's something that I'm getting sick and tired of seeing in the gaming industry as a whole. Overall, I have no problem saying this. Any other negatives that we want to mention on this one?
I only really cared about Astrobot. Everything else was like...
Everything else is
everything
blah.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Like cool to meh. Yeah. Like, which was an awful start to the rest of June, except Nintendo.
Yes, Nintendo was our saving grace again.
Nintendo did very well, but I'm going to keep my comments for June.
Yes. Unfortunately, we are not necessarily done. But Alex, any final thoughts you want to throw in?
Nothing more from me.
Okay, so now we get to talk about this, and I'm so looking forward to this, because I've been dealing with a little bit of drama this past week. For those who don't know, the GNRO minicast is a little backed up because, you know, not only have Alex and Brenton been dealing with various situations. I also
Dead.
spent...
We've been dying.
Yeah, pretty much.
funniest thing about that, because I basically spent the first 4 months of this year dying and constantly going through cycles of dying endlessly, to the point where I couldn't record a lot of videos. And so when stories broke, even if I was maybe a week later to it, I would get to that story fairly late. However, what I would do in those cases with those videos is I would again offer my opinions and try to give some outer context to it. This week in particular, I released my viewpoints on the Helldivers 2 controversy. My personal opinions on them, everything that happened. Now, me and Alex have also gone over this in a previous podcast and given our opinions there, but I released my opinions this week when we're recording this, and there was a reason for it. And unfortunately, I upset some high school twat who has 50 to 100 accounts and probably a severe case of Asperger's syndrome. And so I got constantly reminded of how late I was to the party. Spoiler alert, I didn't even know about the Helldivers controversy until 2 weeks after the controversy was in full swing, and it had since resolved. And so at that point, I was already going to be late to the party, but I felt that I could still do a video on it because of Sony's weird manipulations in that situation. And I was right, because guess what happened a day after the state of play, boys and girls? Sony requires PlayStation Network account linking for Sweet Baby Inc. influenced God of War Ragnarok for PC. Can I drop this mic? Can I?
Sure.
Can I
I mean,
drop it? No, I can't. It's on an arm.
Well, don't break it.
Yeah, no, don't break it. But hey bitches, I told you so. So, unfortunately, I had to keep this from Alex when we recorded the previous month's podcast. Sorry about that, Alex. But
Okay.
Sony is not learning from their mistakes. And instead, they're going to implement them with new games instead of your game, which, from what I'm being told, is already yesterday's news because the first Descendant is kicking its ass. So, sorry, Helldivers 2 players. I really tried to give you that pro, but unfortunately, a bunch of you were a bunch of whiny bitches and decided to complain about how I was late to the party. So, I was going to be nice about it, but now I'm not going to be so nice. And instead, I'm going to talk about how Sony's going to screw you, eventually, because that's what they do, especially when gaming companies have a lot of success. It goes to their heads. And so, all of the things that you were so worried about with Helldivers 2 and eventually fought back against, Sony's going to implement, starting with God of War Ragnarok. Or maybe even earlier than that, given how they handled Helldivers 2. So when you buy God of War Ragnarok on PC, it will require that your Steam account be linked with your PlayStation Network account. Oh, hey, Brinton, did you know that there are still countries in this world that don't have access to PlayStation Network?
Wait, really?
There are, in fact. I'm going to share a comment that was given to me for the Helldivers 2 controversy that I found very interesting. In my area of the world, Sony PS5 website blatantly saying you can buy the game in Steam with a link that only shows the game without a buy button. As if trolling people in that particular country. Oh, you want to buy it? Yeah, too bad. Can't press that button now, can ya? Hey, Sony, you done fucked up. And this is going to cost you, because I have a feeling that Ragnarok on PC ain't gonna do so well. I can already tell you that friends of mine that have not played Ragnarok because they don't own a PS5, nor will they ever, they're dedicated PC players, they're already not going to buy Ragnarok or the Valhalla DLC for it. Because they think that this is just a scummy practice. And they're right. They're absolutely right. This is Sony full on themselves, and they eventually will have to learn the hard way when the market says, fuck no, we're not doing this. Way it goes. Alex, thoughts? Now that things have come full circle?
It's a terrible idea, Sony. It's a terrible idea. Even if you do live in a place like here in the US, for example, that you do have access to PSN, maybe you're on a really tight budget and you can't afford it. Steam is free, right?
Yep.
Steam is at least sorry. Steam is at least free. So, right, PSN costs a monthly fee.
Uh-huh.
So why on earth would we need to link everything together?
Well,
It's
and more importantly, why
ridiculous.
does PlayStation Network or PSN cost a fee? Because of online play and because of other games that you can get access to. That if you're a dedicated PC player, you're probably not going to get access to, because that would require downloading the PlayStation app, which you're probably not willing to do.
Indeed.
A lot of people don't realize this, but PC owners, they're either dedicated Steam or they're dedicated Epic Games platform. That's it. They don't run anything else.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
And some of that is because in their countries, PlayStation Network isn't available, but Steam is. So what you've basically done, PlayStation, Sony, is hamstring yourselves. Good job. But anyway, sorry, Alex, continue.
Nah, I mean, that's all I have to say. It's just one more boneheaded corporate decision by Sony.
No, it absolutely is.
Fucking done, Sony.
Slow
clap for you.
Yes. There you go. Give me another clap, Alex, because I did not get that on the mic.
All right, here goes.
Nope, still didn't. Damn it. Well, I did my own clap, so we'll be okay.
Okay.
But yeah, or Brenton, your thoughts on this?
They parallel, Alex. I super don't understand why we have to link everything. No. Even as I had set up a new email account, and this is like during my divorce because I lost everything, and was resetting up all these accounts. I was like, oh, link this and this and this and this, and I'm like, no, stop.
No, stop. Yeah, no, I get it.
Like, it was so annoying. I was like, I just want to play games. Why is this so complicated?
I hate to say it, but I'm going to give some props over to Ubisoft. I can't even believe I'm doing this. Because at least when they're advertising their service, they actually are going out of their way to say, no, you should leave these other platforms and instead join us. So at least they're actually saying, like, no, just have the one platform. It's totally fine. But no. Eventually, Ubisoft will require that, because as much as I think that they're really hoping Assassin's Creed and Star Wars Outlaws does well, the problem is that you're banking on it, and if it doesn't do a certain modicum of success, it's gonna hurt Ubisoft. And when you set stakes like that on yourself, history tells us you're gonna have failure. Not just my assumption, or history will tell us you're going to have failure, which is basically going to be you cutting your own legs off. Kind of like what Sony's doing right now. Yeah, ultimately, the decision here is, I mean, I hate to say it this way, but just because of what I've had to deal with in this past week for being late on this story, even though I provided opinions on how this was a bad practice, and this was not something that you should continue to consider doing. The fact that they're continuing on in it, I mean, I really wish I could say I was surprised by this, but I wasn't. As soon as they did it once, I knew that they were going to try it again with a more prominent title this time, and makes me really pissed off to be a PlayStation owner. And one of the reasons that I don't necessarily hype up PlayStation over other consoles anymore. Because let's be honest, all gaming companies, especially the console makers, they're all doing stupid shit like this. You know, we just spent like the better part of an hour railing on Uncle Phil and Xbox. And look, Here's Sony trying to be the better man. Wow, they did such a great job. So, there you go. But final thoughts on this state of play and the dismal state that it started the E3 season with. I honestly saw people saying that, and I was one of them, saying like that, considering how short this was, it couldn't have been their full state of play, that they had to have a second one waiting in the wings for June exactly. And turns out, no, this was it. This was all they had.
That's too bad.
Mm-hmm. If I had to officially declare a loser amongst the console makers, I'm gonna do it even before we record the June podcast. It is Sony. I mean, technically, in my opinion, both Xbox and Sony lost, but that's just because Big Dick Nintendo came into the room. So
Can't wait to talk about that throbbing penis next month.
Oh man.
Oh my gosh, I couldn't help myself.
What's even worse is originally on this agenda, I had the rumor direct and the things that were going to get announced on it because I really wanted to speculate. Now I kind of want to compare them because here's the thing. The rumor, it wasn't 100% true, but there were some things that were kind of true about it. So I don't know. Maybe we'll do that. I'm still debating on that. But yeah, I think we've hit the nail on the head on this one. And unfortunately, we've passed 2 hours, so I know that we have a discussion on this. But I mean, we could do it right now, or we could also open things up for a full-on roundtable discussion on this. What do you guys think?
The discussion, I mean, I know I have a lot to contribute to the question that's staring at me, and I don't know what your guys' bandwidth looks like. So
see, this is actually one of those things that I did put on this agenda because it is a listener question. But then, you know, we have a friend of ours named Rising Sun, and I almost kind of want to bring him into this discussion. But I could technically do another roundtable discussion along with this discussion, and then we can add stuff to it. But let me really quick just kind of introduce this because I think we can go over it as long as you're okay with it, Alex.
Yeah, I'm good.
This is a listener question that has been asked quite a bit, not just for us, but also of industry insiders on Twitter and Reddit, as well as numerous other places. And it's a difficult question to answer. But specifically it is, why are there so many cases of burnout amongst game creators, Hollywood, whether it be directors, producers, lighting experts, actors, comic book writers, authors, etc.? And how do the companies start to prevent it? This is something that has happened in the gaming industry quite a bit, and it's been happening for decades. And I don't think, from a writing perspective, or at least from a creative perspective, I don't think the industry ever will truly understand the damage that it causes, especially when you solely, in the case of somebody like Square Enix, where you rely on one guy. One guy is making all of your stories and making all of your money, and then they burn out, and you have nothing at that point. You have to basically train a new guy, which means you're going to have some failures, which is going to mean hard times. And so at that point, I've even been in debates with people about how to handle this situation. And some people have liked my solutions, some haven't. Alex, do you have any solutions on this one?
That's hard because I don't know how well this would apply to everybody, but certainly we'll just say start at the lower runs of say in the gaming industry, and I think that is just
if you want to restrict it to just one industry, that's totally fine.
Yeah,
one industry can speak for others.
Yeah, games. I feel like this is just as applicable to anime, especially, right? It is just the proper
Anime's
work-life
starting to feel
balance.
this. Like I've seen a lot of manga creators that are also suffering from this too,
Definitely.
and
It's
their
just, again, it's that
publishers
need
are
for
harassing them endlessly and milking them for all they're worth.
it's the need for a proper work-life balance. It's the need for uh just a general patience from the higher ends of management. And sometimes it's also the need to reduce the workflow a little bit better
Yep.
and distribute the workflow more evenly. If we talk like an anime, right? A lot of anime still relies, of course, on quite a few different in-betweeners to fill in all the animation between it. And
Right.
in-betweening is a really tough job. It doesn't pay very well. You generally only get paid by the drawing. You rarely get paid by hour.
Hmm.
So yeah, generally are working very long hours just to make your ends meet. If that's where you're starting out, or at least to hopefully get promoted. So that's already one tough aspect, and it's definitely I think where a lot of people would burn out pretty quickly and pretty easily. And
Yeah.
we see this in the gaming industry, at the where you're like a programmer or you're a graphic artist, right? And you're having to put in these extremely long hours, and you have to do crunch, and you have to do all these things, and it's just something that companies need to
Hmm.
probably start avoiding and start dodging from now on. Is trying to not come to rely too much on crunch and these long, grueling sessions, and certainly don't shame people for I mean, if you do anyway, I'm saying if for the companies that do still do the crunch, don't shame people for wanting to, not do it and go home early.
Hmm.
That's another big aspect is when you start feeling the peer pressure, you start feeling the shame because you feel like, oh, I'm not putting in my weight, I'm not putting in my contribution like my other coworkers because I just don't want to spend all night and camp out at the office.
Well, and another thing too is maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way, but it just seems really unprofessional to rely on the one guy. That one guy is your saving grace, and he's the one that's, this graphic artist is the only one that can make this model in the game come to life. And you basically just run them into the ground until you can get nothing from them, and then you're done. Whereas you could have three or four of this same guy, so to speak, or at least the same guy in terms of experience. And you could then utilize that talent more effectively and on multiple projects, enough so you could give guy number one a break and let him recharge the batteries, right? It
Yeah.
seems really irresponsible and unprofessional to rely on the one guy and milk the teat for all it's worth. Even from a business standpoint, it just doesn't sound logical because there's no security in it. And companies, especially big companies like Square Enix, Capcom, like they're craving security right now. They're craving financial security during difficult times, and to me it seems like it would be a better idea to just not have the one guy. Instead, have four or five of those guys. But again, like I'm spitballing here.
hmm
So, um, Brenton, your take on this, like how do companies try to prevent this rampant burnout?
I want to echo and say everything that like both you and Alex have already talked about is very important and is a continuous conversation that
Mm,
needs to happen until it happens and then consistently happens. And I would even say, going off of what you were just talking about, Adam, not relying on just one person. And if we are, like, having more appreciation or expressing that appreciation for that person, um, and not putting so much on their shoulders
mhm,
and setting them up to fail. Um, I'm a really good, I like my last employment before I went to go work for the state
mhm,
is a really good example where like, did I have the support? Did I have a good team? Did I like my supervisors? Was the company excellent to work for? Absolutely, 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 absolutely.
Right.
It just like, just after a while, it just takes that one small instance where, or at least in that experience, it just took one small little instance where all of a sudden everything just blew up all around me. And I like, and all those pillars and the foundation and all of that support and satisfaction and gratitude, like, randomly disappeared. Um, and that's when I realized I was exhausted doing what I was doing, and realizing that it was a highly underappreciated job. Um, which I know it sounds funny hearing that from a social worker, because I work in a very thankless career.
Wait, you're a
Um,
social worker that has problems being social? How on earth
I,
are you still in a
I,
job? Wow, you're
I'm the
not the first one
perfect.
I've met that has that issue.
I am the perfect HBO primetime
Oh,
television program.
dude, people don't realize social work is like one of the highest burnout professions ever.
It like it really is, and it goes back to what Alex was talking about, the work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that I am in a severely understaffed career, that there are not enough people getting the education that I'm getting the licensure that I'm working towards,
Mm-hmm.
to make it so that way we don't have these freakishly large caseloads, which leads to exhaustion, which leads to burnout. Like, I get, and I actively choose to be a part of it. Actively choose to be a part of it. And what completely astonishes me, and I'm not saying this about the state agency that I work for, the supervisors I work for, they're really, really good about this.
Sure.
It's other places in my industry that like talk incessantly: fill your own cup, fill your own cup, fill your own cup, self-care, 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 take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like do what you need to do to prevent burnout, but then provide zero resources, zero opportunities to be able to practice what's being preached.
Right.
And then we're expected to give like 100%, if not more, of ourselves to, and I say this with all respect, especially for the demographic I work with, to work with very needy and demanding people.
Mm-hmm.
Very needy and demanding people. And it's extremely exhausting. And being an introvert and somebody who lives with social anxiety disorder, my energy levels drain so much faster, because
Right.
it's not just attending to, and I kid you not about this number, it's not just attending to 135 people that are in my caseload.
Mm-hmm.
135 people. It's not just making sure they're taken care of and that their cases are being monitored and respected and that things are moving forward in a timely manner.
Right.
And just dealing with 135 very strong personalities. It's also colleagues, community partners, administration.
Yeah, the case only accounts for the individual, not necessarily the people around that individual.
Exactly.
And
And then yes, because then, like, and you make a good point there too, Adam. It's like, there's the individual, and then that individual may have like
right.
another 5 people behind them that I also have to play nice with as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's exhausting.
Right.
And what I have found is a little appreciation, a little genuine appreciation, recognition, practicing what you preach with actually providing a work-life balance.
Mhm.
And I would even say setting boundaries with your employer and like following through to the very T is how you prevent burnout.
And one thing that I find funny that you have mentioned numerous times, and you and I have had conversations on this. I think even Alex and I creatively have had discussions on this. Work-life balance. Um, Especially if you're a creative, that's a very difficult thing to do. Because here's the thing, your work is your passion. And especially as a writer, you want to be able to do what you're passionate about, but you also have to balance things out and take care of the things around you. Now throw into the mix that your bosses are over your shoulder and they are literally relying on you to pay their family's bills. You literally have the weight of a company on your shoulders. And then they sit there and expect this isn't going to break them. This isn't going to create lasting problems for them in the long run. And companies like Konami wonder why Kojima left. Because Kojima is like one of the earliest incarnations in the gaming industry that I can think of where this was actively seen. Because Konami literally lived and died by a Kojima release for a while there. If a Metal Gear wasn't coming out in the next 3 to 4 years, you were hearing rumors about Konami going bang. And so at that point, I could only imagine being Kojima in that argument and ultimately deciding, I've got to leave here. I'm going to go make my own company. And we're going to run things more securely than Konami ever did when I was working for them. Which, for all the people that want to make complaints about Kojima Productions, it looks like that's what he's doing. Is that he's running things a lot more efficiently and basically allowing for that kind of balance to occur within the company. I don't know that 100% because I don't know the internal metrics of Kojima Productions, but it's as successful as it needs to be right now, and I don't really see Kojima trying to push for anything additional that he couldn't overextend for, kind of thing. And that's the example that I want to give of like that work-life balance. Eventually you have to do that, and it's so hard when you're a writer or a creator of a game. I can only imagine, like in my case, it's hard. It's literally like Atlas holding the world at its shoulders. Then I try to picture somebody like Scott Cawthon trying to do it while trying to make the Five Nights at Freddy's games at the same time. And it wrecks my brain. It absolutely destroys my brain. And I have nothing but respect for people like Scott Cawthon who have handled way harsher stress loads than me, being able to do that. So it's a difficult situation to be able to handle. And ultimately, my solution kind of goes with what I was saying to Alex. Because, I hate to wax nostalgic, boys and girls, but I'm an old fart. That's what I do. We had a much more efficient system put in place in the 90s and even in the 2000s, which is basically apprenticeship. I actually, while you guys were talking, not to say I was disregarding you or anything like that, but I wanted to double check the names. But I went back into the backlog of Capcom and Square Enix, just to name a few, and noticed, Square Enix was on the verge of bankruptcy. And then this little guy by the name of Hironobu Sakaguchi creates a game, I don't know, maybe you've heard of it, called Final Fantasy. And they actually started to do that exact same thing to him. And Sakaguchi's answer was, no. Instead, put people with me that can learn under me and that I can teach and that will also be able to do what I can do for you. And through that, Konami got people, I don't know, maybe you've heard of them, Tetsuya Nomura, Kazushige Nojima, Yoshinori Kitase. For those who don't know, because you don't follow them Japanese names, I'm mentioning a lot of prominent game directors that still work at Square Enix and that work on your beloved franchises. For example, Yoshinori Kitase, he's the guy in charge of the 7 remakes. Not Nomura. Nomura runs the writing part of it, but Nomura's busy. You know, originally, Nomura was working like 4 projects at a time and running himself into the ground. Now he's only working on 1, and that's basically Kingdom Hearts 4. But he still helps out with the writing, and Kitase takes over the overall direction of the 7 remake games. Why would they trust a nobody, you might ask? He's not a nobody. He's actually worked on the Final Fantasy series for decades now. And he worked under Hironobu Sakaguchi. He learned from him. And that's why we have so many prominent developers, some of which don't even work at Square Enix anymore. They either have their own projects or their own companies, or they work with other companies and are just as successful. And I know I'm making a lot of Square Enix examples. Let's go Capcom. Shinji Mikami worked on a number of games before he made a little game called Resident Evil. Then he trained a bunch of young up-and-comers, like Hideki Kamiya. That name sound familiar for people? It should, because Bayonetta. That's what we used to do. We used to have this apprenticeship that was happening in these industries, even in Hollywood, even in anime. This was happening. You know, people were learning from Akira Toriyama, and in fact, one of the most beloved art styles, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's the guy who came up with the Cell Saga designs, the ones that are the most popular Dragon Ball designs. He learned under Toriyama. And eventually, before Toriyama's untimely passing, there was actually talks that he might have been in talks to resume Dragon Ball Super, because he actually took over the general responsibilities of Super when there were too many commitments for Toriyama. And so he helped to get I think at that point they were in the Tournament of Power, or they were in the Future Trunks saga, the Goku Black arc. And he helped to get those done. And that's why they look more like the Cell Saga designs, which people loved for. And that's what we used to have. And now, no company does that. That I can tell. Everybody is so into... I don't want to say individually based, but it's more like dog eat dog kind of based, where they're more worried that this person that I train could ultimately replace me, instead of, yeah, they're going to replace me, but they're going to be able to do a good job, and I'm going to be able to look back and go, hey, you did a good job. And so ultimately, my solution is more that you need to not have the one guy. You need to have a regime of guys, so that when guy number 1 finishes his project, he can go take a few months and recharge his batteries, so he can come back and he can do even better work for you. But that's okay, because you still have guys 2 through 5 who are working on stuff. I know that the gaming industry is going into this model of like, we're going to release a game every 5 to 10 years of one franchise and just rely on that for 5 years while we develop the next game. Wouldn't it be better to have that one franchise and then it goes and works for 5 to 10 years, and then 2 years later you have another franchise that you were already working on at that point, and that can launch, and then they can go work on that game for another 5 to 10 years, and then in another year or so, you have, and maybe even in between this, you have 3 other smaller games that have smaller teams with more ambitious designs, and they are able to bring in little bits of money to keep yourself afloat during those difficult droughts. That sounds like a lot better, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
especially financially. So that it doesn't really, because ultimately this whole relying on one project for 5 to 7 years, doesn't that feel like you're living paycheck to paycheck?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want a little bit more security? I swear, one of these days I'm going to say security, and I actually will have that NordVPN sponsorship. And people will hate me for the sheer dad joke that I just committed. And I won't care, because I'll be laughing I'll be laughing all the way to the bank. But anything else you guys want to add on there? Like, am I smoking crack on what I'm proposing? That basically we bring back apprenticeships and we have people learn from veterans and then ultimately can take those positions themselves.
That sounds like a good idea.
So they can train the new college students.
Yeah.
Because, that's a constant process if people don't realize. Brenton, anything you want to add on that?
No, I don't.
I swear to God, I keep on teasing that I'm going to make this video, but I think I think I'm pretty much there. I'm going to be making a video just because I can't do it with actual finances or anything like that. But enough people have said, like, well, if you think that the industry needs to be fixed, why don't you fix it? Okay. I'll do it, theoretically, but I'll do it. And I already have, like, this plan in place, and I'll explain it, and who knows, maybe I'll bounce it off of these guys in that video, or maybe I'll just bounce it off of them in the process. But, yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to make this video and see whether or not people think that I'm full of shit or not. Because at this point, challenge accepted, I really do think that this is the way to solve it, is to stop doing what the normal flow is. I mean, for crying out loud, like, you weren't here in the last podcast, Brenton, so I kind of want to ask you on this. We talked about Square Enix and what they were going to do, which is basically they went multi-platform, and they decided to ultimately focus on quality. They weren't the only ones, because Don't Nod, the company behind Life is Strange, also basically created their own battle plan. I don't know if you saw this, but basically they demoted themselves. They basically said that, well, we can't do AAA games, or at least the way that people think AAA is, and instead we're going to demote ourselves down to a AA studio. They basically put a bunch of big projects on hold, not canceled, just on hold until they could properly give them the time they need, and instead focus on those smaller ventures to keep themselves afloat so that they don't have to let anybody go. They don't have to lay off anybody. Because that was their plan. They didn't want to lay anybody off. They wanted to keep working with the people they had. Did you see any of this?
No, I didn't. However, I think that's, like, good for them.
Yeah. No, I think that was actually I compliment them, along with Larian Studios, who made Baldur's Gate 3, who made similar decisions as well. They basically severed their ties with the AAA gaming industry after Baldur's Gate 3, and they complimented Don't Nod for doing that, because it just makes more sense to downgrade yourself and work on smaller projects and keep yourselves afloat with those projects, and then work on the bigger, ambitious projects in the meantime. I think that ultimately was the better decision, whereas the current gaming industry seems to be leaning towards what people are laughably calling the Rockstar model, which is basically just release a game and then coast on its coattails for 5 to 7 years, or as of next year, 6 to 9 years for game development, until you can put out the next GTA. That's the Rockstar model. It's just, okay, you put out the one game every 7 or so years, and you just hope that name is going to have that notoriety during that amount of time, and re-release it endlessly on other consoles, obviously, and just ride on its coattails until you can get your new game out. Like, that's... I said it earlier. That just seems like it's living from paycheck to paycheck. I would, if I were in these companies, I would want a lot more job security than that. I'm just saying. Especially if I'm working on like ambitious projects. I really want that. But it sounds to me like we've pretty much hit the nail on the head on this one, unless there's anything else you guys want to add.
Nothing more from me.
Yeah,
Yep.
there isn't much more I could say.
All right. So I think that's actually a good point for us to wrap things up. So, Brenton Volley, if people want to reach out to you and discuss the various things we talked about tonight, where can they find you?
Nowhere.
I was actually, you mean the Marvel location? That big skull in the middle of space? That's awesome.
Yes, it's very roomy, albeit the stench is awful.
And there's yellow goop everywhere.
Yeah, don't touch it, don't eat it, don't drink it. Just just ignore it with every fiber of your own being.
So, what he's actually saying is probably my personal answering service.
Yep,
because it's just gonna happen.
Yeah, and I mean, just
yeah. See, this is the best part. Is like you and I are basically answering the same way. Yeah.
Just talk to Drac. He sends your questions to me all the time. I answer them as I can.
And we talk these stories all the time, honestly. Like, I bring Alex in on a lot of stuff, but also me and Alex have some discussions as well on stories that maybe me and Brenton don't talk about. Like I one of these days we are in one of our streams or whatnot, Alex, we're gonna have that Yuji Naka conversation because that needs to happen. That was such a sad fall from grace. It really was. But anyway, Alex, the Shadow Blazer, how do people get a hold of you? I went from depressing into optimistic.
Yes, so my YouTube channel, Shadow Blazer 3000, my anime channel, I'm gonna do some videos for it sometime.
Yes.
And yeah, so that's the best place you can always see my content is that channel.
All right. And if people want to be able to reach out to me, well, first of all, if you're watching this, then you're either on the YouTube channel, so you can check out some of the other content that we do. For example, the wonderful Yu-Gi-Oh! Battle City reviews, or episodic reviews that we did, or actually not episodic, dual reviews that we did. And trust me, guys, the finals are coming. We're just trying to find a secure point where we can actually work on them because of the sheer amount of episode load that they add. So you guys can check
out. And the fact that Alex and I passed away this year.
You ascended to a higher plane of existence and then
we are
right back down and don't know why.
I honestly, if that legitimately happened, I really don't know why.
It's like, yeah, what the hell?
Why am I here?
And then again, also, if you want to see another, because this has been referenced so many times, because apparently Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a Pokemon knockoff. I'd love to see your justification there on that. If you want to see another Pokemon knockoff, you can see my wife Andrea and myself reviewing the first season of Beyblade. And we're actually, I think as of the episodes that are up right now, we're about halfway. So you guys can check all that out and see my reactions to my favorite character of the series, which is Tyson's grandpa, because nobody will ever beat that guy, little dude. You will never be able to tell me otherwise. So you guys can check all that stuff out. But if you're listening on podcast platforms, you can listen to us on Amazon Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Player.fm. Please leave a review. Please leave likes. It definitely helps out with those algorithms. And also like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. It helps out there as well. So that definitely helps out. And I'm at least happy to say this, that much like J.R.R. Tolkien loves to do, yes, things do get darkest just before the dawn, because while May was a difficult year, or difficult year,
wow,
a difficult month to do, we have June, and June is nothing but great things on the horizon, great games that got announced, and all of that to look forward to. So you guys can look forward to that on the June podcast. We hope to see you guys there. In the meantime, though, for myself, for Alex, and for Brenton, we will see you guys next time. And special thanks to Alex and Brenton for finally being able to recover and join me once again for these podcasts, because I did miss you guys. I really did. It's been a rough couple of months, not just for myself, for you guys, and we at least get to handle it together.
Yeah, I'm super glad. Like, I was looking forward to this all week.
I almost want to pull a Tanya Gardner and just grab a permanent marker and grab your hands and just start marking them. So the heart of the cards will always be with us.
Cool.
So we'll see you guys next time for June's podcast. In the meantime, stay safe, and we'll see you guys next time.